536. Welcome everyone. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yes. For the strategic plan. Looks like it must be nice. I need a motion to amend the agenda to include, we need to approve or deny the emergency snow closure on 11/8/22.
So moved.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next, I need an approval of tonight's agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Okay, for announcements. I just want to remind everyone that these board meetings are our business meetings held in public and not public board meetings. The board is governed by Idaho Code Title 33, Chapter 5, follows our district policies, and is governed by IDAPA. The time for public input is to provide an opportunity for the public to express themselves to the board. It is not a time to engage with the board, nor is it a time for questions and answers. The board in its discretion, may ask clarifying questions to ensure it understands the input provided. However, no discussion or conversation may take place. We do have a student accolade.
Yes, so we were notified that Timberlake High School girls soccer won the 3A girls soccer sportsmanship award for the state of Idaho.
Oh, that's great.
And that's a big deal, and both of our comprehensive high schools are really focused on schools of excellence, and sportsmanship is one leg of that three-legged stool. So they have a lot to celebrate at Timberlake High School.
That's awesome.
Great.
That is excellent. Okay, we'll move into public input. We do have 3 people that have requested to address the board. The first person is Ben Strawman.
Strawn.
I'm sorry?
Strawn.
Strawn.
Yep.
Ben Strawn. If you want to come up to the podium, please.
I'm 90% blind. Can I speak from here?
Yes, you may.
It's just a lot easier.
Not a problem.
Yeah, I'm just here to address the board about the clubs at school
Okay.
and the fact of keeping them or not, and how I feel personally about that. I know I've been seriously involved in the community a lot in the last probably 5 years here in Rathdrum, in other places before that, but seeing the destruction and things that have been going on that we've been actually helping clean up around the community and trying to fix due to lack of care of people's children. These clubs, my son included, help keep these kids in check. They give them a place to be able to have these outlets with other like-minded kids in a safe environment. And I think personally, it was huge last year. Will Griffin here actually had a club in Lakeland that helped my son so huge. It wasn't anything to do with academics, but a place to do their work, a place to do with adults that are, supervising, that can help young men turn into men, and people that have questions and stuff like that. But having those things around gives these kids an outlet besides what we've been seeing around the city. And I don't know if anybody else has seen it, but we've done a heck of a lot of cleanup this last year due to children running around and destroying the city unchecked. And I really think doing away personally with these clubs would be an extremely bad deal for the city and the children that are at stake.
Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Next up is Betty Magnus.
Thank you. Okay, I'm Betty Magnus. I'm almost a 65-year-old graduate from Rathdrum High School.
Yeah.
I have a soft spot for our place in Mountain View School. I propose that the composite pictures that are left up there could be opened up to the public somehow.
Okay.
Because every time I go there, it's locked up, and plan one would be that they propose a place and the time, like my grandchildren are coming home for Christmas and they'd like to see our pictures because my husband and I both have our pictures there. They've been there about 70 years. And I think they're a part of the community, and I'm very sensitive to you because it belongs to Mountain View and it looks beautiful up there where they are. But I'd like to be able to see them in the public. So second plan would be that they be moved to the museum. But if not that, I know it would be expense to have them reprinted. And I don't know if Herb Jones would allow that. But the community can't get in to see any of them. Some of them are gone, like Herb Singer is gone, and some of the singers are gone, and their pictures are up there. But
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your input. And last we have Will Griffin.
Hello, I'm Will Griffin. I'm the community director for the Lakeland School District with North Idaho Young Life, and also eye-to-eye facilitator with Idaho Drug Free Youth. And so we do substance use prevention, presentations to schools, and been really active at Lakeland for the last couple of years, helping to supervise clubs, start clubs, just assist teachers. The last meeting that I came to, I had come asking for approval for the club that we had going for the last couple of years to be approved again so we could restart. And it seems now that the question of clubs themselves are kind of on the table to be discussed. And so I wanted to share a post from a parent that was put on the Lakeland District community parents Facebook group page. This is similar to an email that she had sent to the clerk, which I'm not sure if it made it into your packet or not. Is it okay if I go ahead and read this to you?
You can. I just want to remind you though, you have 3 minutes.
Cool.
Okay.
It's quick.
Perfect.
I'm reaching out today about an issue that is going to be discussed at the upcoming Lakeland District School Board meeting tonight at 5:30. A few board members spoke that they want to discontinue any non-sponsored, non-academic clubs completely. As a parent of 4 children in our district, hearing their comments made me very upset. Only one board member showed his apprehension of canceling all no-sponsored, non-academic clubs. He is the only one I heard actually caring about the students and the many student-loved clubs that don't fit into the academic standards. I personally thought that the negative board members' comments were only based on personal beliefs and not based on what is good for the students of the Lakeland School District. There are many after-school clubs that don't meet the criteria of school-sponsored academic clubs in our district. The board members are the voice of the students, parents, and our community. I feel like in last month's meeting that fell short. I hope with our community's help we can ask them to hold themselves to that standard of being our voice and not making decisions not based on that. My husband and I have 4 children in the Lakeland District, 3 boys that attend Lakeland Senior and a daughter at Lakeland Middle. I'm asking the community and our board members to really consider our children's interest in continuing the after-school clubs, sponsored, academic, and non-sponsored, not academic alike. All the clubs that have previously been available at the schools up until this year. When my boys started high school, they all felt very overwhelmed and out of place in the beginning. That completely changed after starting several after-school clubs and organizations, academic and non-academic. The many clubs that my kids have been a part of have helped keep them, as well as the rest of the students, connected to each other and to their school. Each one of the clubs available have helped the students develop more social skills. These clubs provide a safe place to interact with each other. Some of these kids come from difficult home lives, and these programs provide them with a structured, safe sense of a family and friends. Not everything needs to be about academic to be important. My 3 boys attend pizza and game days and anime through Young Life, chess club, football, and weights, Each of these have offered my children the opportunity to engage in critical thinking, sense of community outreach, school spirit, and most importantly, a sense of self-worth and knowledge that these different groups are there to support them throughout their high school experience.
Is there much more?
No, there's not.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyways, I just kind of wanted to represent and not come to you asking for approval of any one specific club, but just communicate that I am hearing a real sense of parents' desire for these clubs to continue because it does provide a safe place and a way for kids to feel more connected to their schools. And so, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to reports, there is no chair report. I just spread too thin and didn't have time to prepare one. Moving on to subcommittee reports, the Science Curricular Activity Advisory Committee report.
So I included the running agenda for you so you can see what we'll discuss November 30th. But at our last, I think we have roughly 20 to 22 parents, community members participating, and then we're allowed to have that many teachers. So we do have a lot of teachers that want to participate, so some are on a waiting list if I get additional parents in the mix. But basically we just went through the curriculums that we were looking at for science and then started assigning people who wanted to read. So we are reading all of the materials before we decide which ones we're actually going to pilot, and really just getting feedback on their quality and looking at some of the areas that we looked at before specific to things that we are not comfortable with having kids read. So our next one will be, we'll decide which ones we're going to pilot and then start looking at teachers teaching from the textbooks, and then parents coming in and doing observations, and we'll survey some of the kids that participate in that and then survey the schools and get some of their feedback. So we're moving forward. So I gave you a pretty detailed timeline, and
Yes.
so it's going really well so far.
Great, I'm glad to hear it.
I'm really happy we have so many parents involved. So
Yeah.
last
Yes,
time we had
fantastic.
consistently 4 or 5, but I mean, we have several have reached out after we had our first one. So, and we have just said keep coming even if you've missed 1 or 2. And we just want as many people involved as we can. So
Can I add to what Dr. Pasley just said? At the legal topics session that I attended today, there is a statute that nobody knew about that was presented today that says that by June 30th of 2024, every school district is legally required to have textbooks that are aligned to our standards. So social studies standards have been changed and textbooks have not, so that has to be on our radar. But I just want to applaud the board because we're doing the right work, and we didn't even know we were required to do that, so good job.
So I will just keep bringing this up monthly, and you guys can kind of see the ongoing agenda. You can see what the materials are, and we'll take notes on the next one because there will be some more decisions. So it's going well.
Good job.
Sounds good, thank you, thank you. Next we have the Long Range Planning Committee recommendation. There is a PowerPoint.
Do you want me to,
Move it.
Jared is going to come, but do you want me to click or do you want to?
You can click, that'd be fine.
Okay, so this is Jared Cooksey.
Then I don't have to multitask.
He is a member of the committee.
Yeah, so my name is Jared Cooksey. I'm a resident, local pastor, husband of a great teacher, by the way. She's wonderful. And kids in the district as well. So as part of the committee, we were tasked with coming up with recommendations for what the levy should look like. And so we were all obviously composed of community members and different things like that. So we had a number of brainstorming sessions where we approved and rejected some ideas, and some of the rejected ideas was to run just a supplemental levy this year, which we thought would be easier for voters to understand, it would prioritize the large need of having the levy passed without the fear of it not being passed because of the plant levy. However, it doesn't provide the support for our facilities that we believe that the classrooms and the buildings need. So the second brainstorm was to increase the supplemental levy by the amount needed for both the plant levy and run just one levy. We didn't feel like that was open and transparent as we would like to be, and we think that people would think that we're trying to pull one over on people, and we didn't feel like that was right. But it does provide funding for both needs in one ballot, so that was a positive. And then it wouldn't confuse our community with two different items on the same ballot. We feel that tends to get confused. It looks like we're asking for a lot of money in two different categories, which we are, but it's not as understood, I guess. So one of the things we talked about is running a permanent supplemental levy, which is allowed by statute, and it decreases voter fatigue over time, and it ensures adequate funding, so we wouldn't have to go back to the ballot every 2 years or so. But we don't believe this is the right climate, both weather-wise or economically, to do that. So people are concerned about inflation and may have a hard time committing monetary resources in perpetuity. So we just didn't feel like that was a good concept either at this point. So our shoot for the moon recommendation, thank you for that picture there. We asked to run the supplemental levy and the plant facility levy side by side on the same ballot, and then let the patrons vote. The reasoning is we want to be transparent and honest. We feel like two levies support two different needs, and they need to be represented in that way. And this format allows voters to cast their ballots based on their understanding of the issues. So this requires educating and sharing knowledge. It requires us as as a committee, as I don't know who else. I mean, whoever we can get to start talking about these levies to help people understand why we have to do levies. Ensure people understand the difference between the two ballot measures. And that was the biggest thing that came back time after time, is people don't understand that us asking for a levy is not us mismanaging the finances, so we have to go back to the pool every 2 years because we overspent. It's the way our state runs. And so people need to be educated in that and how we do that. So the supplemental levy, the term is 9.52 million. And the plant facility levy, six-year term would be 1.46 million, March 14th, 2023. I'm a wealth of knowledge.
Before they ask questions, can you just talk to the board a little bit about the conversations that we had with regard to the how we landed, I guess, on the dollar amount, because there were a lot of conversations about that.
Yeah, so the dollar amount, especially with the 9.52 million, what we were concerned about was carrying over the same levy amount from 1 year to the next, considering inflation. We didn't feel like that would be actually maintaining status quo. It would actually be, in a sense, going backwards. And we wanted to recommend that we at least submit a levy for maintaining status quo in terms of the financial obligations of the district. Does that make sense? And similar to the plant levy as well.
So can I add to that?
Yes.
So part of the conversation was there was actually a robust conversation about increasing that dollar amount kind of by the 9% inflation that we're seeing, because $9.52 million next year isn't the same amount of money really as it was 2 years ago when we ran the levy, recognizing everything costs more. The conversation that we had within the committee was our patrons within our community are having to tighten their belts and make do with what the money they're bringing in, and they're having to cut to in some places to be able to afford gas and groceries. And so we felt like we needed to do the same. So while it's the same amount, we're recognizing that we too are paying a lot more for a lot of different things, and this isn't going to cover everything, and we may have to look at potentially cutting a few things to be able to live within this dollar amount, but we didn't feel good about asking for more.
And, oh, go ahead. I was just gonna say, in running them side by side, is there a way that both of them can pass? Or is it one or the other regardless?
It's.
They would,
Cause I know they require a 50% plus one.
for supplemental, and a 55% for the
55, okay.
plant facility. So they would run as two separate measures on the ballot, and both will have the in favor of or against
Okay.
option. So potentially one could pass and one may not.
One may not.
Right. They could both fail,
Mhm.
Or they
but
could
is
both
there,
pass.
they could both pass,
Mhm.
okay.
Yep. We're going on the premise
Risky.
that there no.
It's really risky.
Well, and I guess I know the board knows this, but I want to say this so that the patrons who are going to watch the video or listen to this know this. The Long Range Planning Committee is a subcommittee of the board and is a recommending body. So this is our recommendation after looking at all of the information that we sifted through, recognizing that the board can hear the recommendation and make a different decision. But we talked about putting the plant facility levy off one more year and just running the supplemental levy, but we just kept coming back to the need to maintain our buildings and the fact that the state does not fund facilities in Idaho. So that was a struggle.
With the amount being suggested for the plant facility levy, did the Long Range Planning Committee have access to what is needed to be done in this district and the dollar value behind that? I mean, how did we come up to the 1.146, and what is that going to accomplish for us?
So the 1.146 is what it was.
Okay.
So the conversation really was around, we just don't feel like this is a good economic climate to be asking for more money.
Both numbers are exactly what
Exactly
the lady said.
what it was before.
For the record.
Mhm. And we talked about.
And we had other numbers that we threw around that we didn't put up here because we were at this place of it's, you know, are we really going to ask for that much more? The biggest thing that I've taken away again is the education piece of this, of educating the community, helping people understand that, again, this is how the school districts work in our state. And this is, again, essentially this is the price that we pay for the ability to be able to choose our own curriculum and do the things that we do. So that's why we have to do this, so the state doesn't control everything we do.
Great.
Yeah.
With the supplemental levy, is it just supplanting everything that it was before?
Yeah, we talked about when we really looked at, and Brian helped us with this, but when we really looked at what are we using those dollars for, it really is staff, certified and classified. We actually have a big gap between what we get for our classified staff and what we actually pay.
Right.
So that the levy helps cover that. All of our safety,
Right.
our curriculum, and then athletics.
Okay.
And when you put those numbers up, what we get from the state for some of those we get nothing from the state, what we actually pay, and so what the gap is, it comes out to that right around that 9.52.
And when you say athletics, what all is involved with that we're paying for?
Travel, coaches, officials, uniforms,
Okay.
Equipment.
equipment.
Okay.
How did you arrive at the 6-year term for the plant facility levy?
How did we get there?
We talked about, it could have been a 5-year, but if we had done a 5-year,
That's right.
we would have gotten to a point where we had to run a supplemental, then a plant facility, and then come back and run a supplemental, and so we would have 3 years in a row of going to patrons. And so our thought was we're going to be successful in running these two side by side, and so in 6 years we would be in this same place where we would run them again side by side. So we'd have 2 cycles of just supplementals before we have to get to that point again.
And then we felt 10 years would be, because you can't do a 10-year, we felt 10 years would be too long of a, like too hard of a sale, but also 10 years from now, would that dollar amount even be worth, valuable?
Yeah, you will suffer the inflation.
Right.
Yeah. So we were trying to avoid voter fatigue, going back to the voters 3 years in a row. And you can satisfy that by changing that to 4 years or.
I'm just concerned that the plant facility dollar amount is not, at a 6-year term, is not gonna keep up with inflation,
Mhm.
and that we're going to be being able to repair less and less and less, and we've already had conversation about how
We're already
playing
playing
catch up.
catch-up.
We're moving because of funding, and yeah. So I am concerned about that. I don't know what you guys feel about that.
Well, you're gonna face that no matter what the dollar amount is, if it's an extended term. You know, if it was $1.5 million, that $1.5 million 6 years later is subject to the inflationary factor, so that issue is an issue no matter what the number is. You know, my position is, I've stated since I first came on the board, that I felt like because of the history that we've gone through in recent years and the need to rebuild faith and trust with our community, it was important that we not increase either of these levies. In fact, I propose actually lowering the supplemental a little bit at one point, but I appreciate the committee's work, and you guys have done a good job. I think you've had good conversations, and your rationale for arriving at your recommendation is just.
Any other questions for the committee, man?
Thank you for being our spokesperson.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
I'm just plugging in my computer before it dies.
Oh, are you waiting for me so you can see what we're doing next?
Lisa, when are you wanting this board to,
So timeline?
yes,
So my hope is that at the December board meeting, the board can make a decision. So the recommendation from the committee is those 2 amounts in March.
okay.
And we didn't talk about the rationale for March, but if one of the measures was to not pass, we could, as a board, you could make the decision that we were gonna rerun it in May,
Okay.
which would give us one more, or if it were the plant facility, that could even be rerun in August. If it's the supplemental, May would be critical.
Okay.
So that's why we chose March. The way the timeline runs is if March is the date that the board approves, then the ballot resolution language has to be approved at the January board meeting.
Okay.
And so it's kind of a tight timeline. But we did want to be able to present tonight and have the opportunity to kind of mull it over, maybe talk to some of your constituents, and then be able to come back and have a conversation and take action in December.
Moving on to the financial report. It is fairly self-explanatory. Did anyone have any questions, comments, or concerns?
Nope.
I noticed on the attendance and the enrollment on the day that this was captured, we were down like almost 300 students. Does that seem to be a normal?
Is that right, Brian? That's not right, is it?
Attendance versus enrollment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I said 4,466 and.
Yeah, that was
4,466.
correct.
That's been about right. Yeah.
So you're almost at 94%.
Yep.
Average is probably 95%, so it was a bigger day than average, but yeah, sometimes you have those.
Okay.
We did have stomach flu going through the schools and, different things.
Okay. Or the safety report.
It was short and sweet this month.
I see that. I'm just curious, did we have the armed safety specialists and SROs in attendance, for the polling places because we weren't in school?
We did not.
Okay,
They're there mostly because of having the kids
students.
in the spring
okay.
buildings.
Does anybody have any questions, comments? Okay, moving on to information, we have, student achievement data.
Do you want to navigate?
Yes, please. I think I might take this too, because I'm the last plan already, so you can see. Do you want me to explain this? Do you feel good about it? You can't see it.
Yeah.
So this is the ISIP computer program, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, and this is reporting each building, and you're just getting to see overall. So remember, there's multiple subtests, like we could do the breakdown, and at any point I can pull up iStation and show you if you wanted to see any of the subtests, because we can even break it down by school per subtest. So like we just met with the elementary team on Monday and just went through every little subtest, and we talked about strength and growth areas and what our target areas are going to be. So we use this data, and it allows us to drill down. It is a screener, so it allows us to kind of drill down and then make additional instructional decisions. So we met for 3 hours and had great conversations about next steps and what we're going to do and our follow-up and how we're supporting kids. So this is our IRI. So the state collects the fall data and they collect the spring data. We collect it monthly, but our spring scores are how they report for the state level for the IRI.
What happened in middle school for October?
Well, one of the schools, I guess, did not realize they were supposed to give it, so that's why it says NA.
Okay.
And I can't open it up for you. It's not showing me the whole window, but that's why you can only see there's NA and then it's 1. So we followed up with that, so it will.
So click on, go back to where it says agenda, go slide over, yep, right there.
And so I'm just going to jump to this one really fast, and then I kind of want to talk about the math. So this is our old IRI. So prior to iStation being our test, we used to give the old Ames measures, and so this was just a 1-minute timing. We gave it to kids, and they would take kind of the median score. So kids were reading a passage, and it's how many words you could read in a minute. So like at the end of 1st grade, the requirement was to be proficient. You had to be able to read 55 words per minute. The IRI no longer does that with the iStation, but we felt like it was still a really valid measure because it was really judging prosody and accuracy and just kids' ability to time and text to read. So last year we brought this measure back, and so it's something that we're starting to just chart and watch, because again, iStation is in context, but it's in isolation, each of those sub-skills. And we felt like this is a way for us to have a broader scope of how they're putting all those skills together and just being able to read fluently. So additionally, we're tracking this as well.
And this is just as a reminder to the board, this is the local measure that we chose for literacy for our SIP tool. Because this is the kids putting all of those reading skills together to become a fluent reader. So each quarter, like for 1st quarter, it's 10 words per minute. So in 1st grade, you can see where we are, you know, at one of our schools, there 90% of our kids are reading at least 10 words per minute or greater for first grade. So second quarter, that jumps from 10 to 25 words per minute. So we may see the percentages fluctuate a little bit as the rigor increases.
And this is something we will look at quarterly. A caveat to this, just kind of a disclaimer. So in kindergarten, in first quarter, we really don't track letter sounds. It's not necessarily appropriate to track it, but we wanted apples to apples. So there really isn't a qualifying proficiency at that level for first quarter. With the preceding quarters we do, because typically you would be tracking letter names. And so you can see there's some real fluctuation in there, but part of that is because these are kinders and they've had 1 quarter of instruction. Not all of them even have their letter names. So first quarter is a huge focus on letter names, and then we start transitioning into letter sounds. But we didn't want to have the first one be letter names and then second quarter it's different. So we still collect that information, but this isn't something we necessarily put on report cards or report to parents. But we're just getting a gauge. It's a way for us to get a kind of a where they're starting and then where our focus is going to be. So questions about this one?
Yeah, how are we recording this data and who is recording the data? So what's the collection method, and then how is it recorded and who's recording it?
The teachers. It's a one-on-one with the teacher.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the teachers, this is something else they have to
It's not something in addition. We've always collected it. It's always been a report card measure for as long as I've been here.
Mm-hmm.
It just happened to be our old IRI as well, and so we were still collecting the data. It just wasn't coming necessarily to the district level in a reporting fashion for you, but it's always been reported on the report card for parents.
Mm-hmm.
So we just asked principals to pull that from their teachers because it was already something they were doing. We did not want to put an additional measure on them.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not supplanting something else, it's just we pulled it at the district level. We just hadn't been charting it. Once iStation took over, we kind of put that by the wayside, but they were still collecting it because it's still a huge it's still an important reading measure that we need to be watching.
Sure.
And when we would look at report cards and saw that we were taking a dip in it, we felt like we needed to bring it back to the forefront.
Okay, great.
But we are really trying to be protective of how much assessment's happening and what we're putting on teachers' plates. So if we were going to add an additional measure, which we haven't talked about that, but what are we taking off then? And really just like what's the information going to give us and is it valuable?
Right.
So the other question is how often do we give this? You know, and if it's not going to change instruction, then what's the point of collecting the data? So those are all part of the conversation when we start looking at data. How meaningful is it and is it relevant?
Yeah, yeah.
We are being mindful of exactly what you're asking. So with the new dyslexia requirements, we actually hired proctors for all of the buildings so that the teachers didn't have yet another one-on-one assessment to do with all of their kids.
Yeah, that's quite the legislation. I read that.
Yeah.
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 Don't even get me started. So, the only other one we have is our math measure, and I just, you know, and I can pull up iReady for you. So there are 3 different ways that we can pull this information. So this is an end of the year proficiency. So all of the standards and the way that iReady will ask it in the diagnostic, it is the end of the year proficiency. So you can pull up a report that's an end of the year proficiency, which is what we reported on for you. So we wouldn't expect any of our kids to show great mastery at this point because they haven't been exposed to these standards. Does that make sense? Like, we want it at the end of the year to be really high, but right now it wouldn't necessarily be indicative of that unless you're a really high functioning kid or have had a lot of exposure to certain content. So all of these scores are fairly normal and as they should be. So we can look at end of the year. That's how you guys get to see growth. So it can be fall, winter, spring. We can look at a view that gives us a standard view, which says here's the standards in isolation and this is how you're doing them in that moment. It's not a growth measure, but it just shows you like right here in this moment, these are the standards that have been taught. We did not pull that report. I can if that's something that you want. Those tend to be a whole lot higher, which is what the principals and the teachers would prefer we report on, but it's not a growth measure. There's also a beginning of the year measure, so it says, okay, at the beginning of the year, a first grader should relatively be able to score right here, or a kindergartner right here, based on the standards that they've been exposed to. So like when we met on Monday with the elementary principals, I pulled up the beginning of the year, well, several schools were 100% proficient, and they're like, please report on that. The kicker is it's not a progression, and so I said I will make sure I highlight that to them, and if at any point you want to see all three of those different views, you can, but this one is the end of the year view, which shows that growth measure. And so, so that is the disclaimer to this. It doesn't look great, but it's because we should have end of the year proficiency at the end of the year. So kids shouldn't be showing high proficiency at this point. It wouldn't be appropriate if they're placed correctly. So.
Could we go back to the first set of charts?
The IRI. This one?
Yeah. To make sure we understand, what this is portraying. This is growth in reading month over month. And you had a lot of discussion with the elementary principals about this information. What was the nature of the discussion about the negative growth patterns?
Well, so this one is kind of deceiving because it's the overall. So we really looked at, and I could pull up iStation and show it to you if you want to see it in its entirety. Like we looked at all the subtests and just areas that we feel like we're not consistently showing growth in. And remember, this is an adaptive test, so what you show proficiency in September isn't necessarily what you're going to show. Like it's going to continue to get harder because the end of the year. So to Lisa's point, at first quarter you may only have to read 10 words a minute, but by the end of fourth quarter you have to be able to do 55. So it's going to progressively get harder. So then can we maintain that, and are we increasing our rigor? So our conversation this first time was just about, this is our current reality, this is where we are. Are we seeing strengths? Are we seeing concerns? What are we going to do to support our teachers in a coaching model through the instructional pieces that maybe we're not doing? So we talked a lot about the curriculum that we're using. We talked a lot about engagement. We talked a lot about just instructional pedagogy to get us where we need to go. Some of the buildings have already done their November ISIP. It just not everybody's done, so I didn't include it. And we're already seeing the uptick. It's starting to go up. September, because it's kind of easier, you see it high, you see a dip pretty consistently in October, and then we'll slowly start. By January, it'll be pretty telling if we're on that trajectory to get proficiency. The schools that aren't, we'll start to see them decline then. And so last year, I did one-on-one meetings with those principals of like, what can we do? And it was, again, all through a coaching, not a gotcha, but like we have to have kids reading. So what are we going to do differently? All of the principals will participate in an instructional audit for reading, which means they're going into the classrooms and spending a whole day. Several of them will do more than one day of just really looking at what does the instruction look like, how much time are kids in text, how much time are we doing the phonemic awareness piece, how much fluency practice are they getting. So not just looking at lesson plans, but like seeing it in action, and is it really effective, and is what we're doing effective? So that was a lot of our conversation. Anything you want to add?
I guess the part of the conversation was what's going on with the 4th and 5th graders, because their scores don't look like our K1, 2, 3, and they really should, because our 4th graders have been taking this assessment as a primary age student since kindergarten. So there was a lot of talk about the willingness to put forth the effort
on the
the test itself. And then we talked a little bit about some of the shifts that they might be seeing in the way things are being presented. So.
Well, I'm not sure how to process that. The 5th grade appears to be the only one that showed month-over-month growth in every school. And so, I mean, that's what we would hope for, right?
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
The others, some did reasonably well, some not so well. So anyway, I appreciate your comments. Please focus in on this as we go forward to make sure that we understand that the right progress is happening.
Right.
Because we all know how.
Without inundating you with too much data, I do think probably maybe in December or January, we should actually pull up iStation and actually look at all the subtests, and so that it will help you understand kind of the conversation, because we can really hone in on, okay, this is a sub-skill that 4 of our schools are struggling with, so what does that instruction really look like? And then we just really start talking about strategies and what we're gonna do. Are we gonna double down and have more time? Like, it's, the idea is that we're changing what we're doing, we're not just continuing to, you know, stay status quo. So the overall can kind of be deceiving because some of those tests are weighted differently depending on what grade. So being able to look at the whole entire test and each of its subcategories per grade is really telling and really helpful. It's just, it's a lot of data, so.
That's your job.
Right. So.
And
Don't take us in the weeds unless
Right.
we need to go there.
the conversation with the principals really over the last year and a half, Lynn's done a really good job of shifting the conversation from what programs are the teachers using to what does the instruction look like.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they're saying, well, we're using this. Well, but how much time and how are you using it and what does the instruction look like? So that's been Lynn's focus with them, and that's why they're doing those instructional audits where they're actually going in and taking a lot of data just on how much direct instruction is actually occurring, or are the kids in centers the whole time, and so there's not a lot of direct instructions. So that when we come back together, we can have those conversations about what's working at some of our buildings and why is it working, so we can replicate that.
And a lot of the conversation was really just about intentionality. Like, you can have kids read, but there's no intentionality. We're not really talking about standards in a way that's meaningful. We're just having kids read. And so it's all in isolation, and then we're not transferring it over. And so lots of our conversations are about what are some things that we could be doing that are better for retention, that is you're gonna see that continued growth, they're gonna be able to keep maintenance of those standards. So if I taught it in first quarter, they're still gonna have it in third quarter. So we've tried to get away from just, well, this is what I do, and more of this is the instruction, and it's not working. Great strategy, not working with this group of kids, so what else are we gonna do? What are some different ideas that we can do? So, and then it is a really good time. I mean, there were, the principals have gotten really good at, there were a couple of buildings that are showing great strengths in 1 or 2 areas, and so those principals really talked about, well, this is what we're doing, and so then we share it to everybody, and then, you know, the follow-up is, okay, so who went back and implemented this, and what changes, how is it impacting the building, what strengths are you seeing, that kind of thing, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm curious as to what the class sizes are of these grades, that we're seeing sort of a negative, you know, maybe a couple point drop or whatever. I'm just wondering for these grades, you know, what the environment looks like that they're in, the class size, you know, how much instruction time is there? Are these classes where we have students, you know, hurling desks and chairs and evacuating classes? Is it, or is it purely, you know, I guess I would like to understand a little bit more of why they're that way, you know, or is it just because we need, I think we still need curriculum across the district for the ELA, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we are seeing, so when we met Monday with the elementary principals, there were a couple of principals who said right away, I wish we had put the November data in, because our November data came back up, because it's not just the things you're talking about, but you know, what's happening in the school on that particular day that the kids are being tested. Is there some fun thing that they're trying to get to, and so they're not as focused, because it is a 30-minute test on a computer that they're doing once a month. So, but
the other thing I would just add is, you know, just reminding when you're looking at data, preponderance of evidence there. Like, I don't know that October, just looking at September and October gives you a really good indication of, is it a strength or a weakness, or, you know, is there, like, if you start to see that trajectory and we slowly, then like November, if we still see it going down, then it's a different conversation, and then we're looking at correct words per minute. Okay, so are we going up in one? So it's putting it all together. Just having a couple is hard to make that determination, but you know, at some point that will have to be a part of the conversation. Are we having situations where it's a lack of exposure to instruction that's because of other situations? And so then that, so it's not just the kids aren't getting it. There could be a whole slew of variables as to why they're not retaining it. And so then what does that look like and how do we support? So some of those conversations happen too. I feel like we've really done a good job to be really inclusive and just, okay, what can we do? Because this is about kids and we want all kids reading. And so it's no excuses, like what are we gonna do? And if something's not working, then how do we support you? We've hired pairs because of it, and okay, so and-so we need additional help, whatever we can do. Like it's just it's all brainstorming, because at the end we want every single kid proficient.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And that was my concern. It's like, do we, how do we fix it?
Right. And it's always solution
from
focused.
the board's perspective. I mean, what
Right.
can we do to make it better? That's why I was wondering what the class sizes look like. I mean, we all know we're busting at the seams across the district as it is,
Right.
But we did do a really good job at the beginning of the year, making sure at least in our K3 classrooms, well, actually all the way across, our class sizes this year are probably the best that they've been, because we were able to hire some teachers.
Awesome.
And so we don't have class sizes of 30 this year like we've had in the past, because we were able to hire additional staff.
Yeah.
And I think the elementary team has done a really good job over the course of the last year and a half of just really being focused on doing right by kids. And so everyone just comes in with a can-do attitude, and so it's all solution-based, and it's a pretty freeing conversation, because at the end we all want the same thing. So they're doing a great job of just, what can we do? How do we support? So they want to support their teachers and support kids. So
yeah, once upon a time there was kind of this aura of competition between the schools, where every school wanted to have the best scores, and so you were kind of protecting the little secrets that you had going on. And Lynn's done a really good job working with the elementary principals and she's shifted that mindset. So now if you talk to them, they will tell you that as the 8 of us and 9, including Kelsey, it's 9 of us, we are all responsible for all of our elementary kids. So what are you doing that is getting you the results you're getting? Because we all need to be doing those things. So it's a completely different conversation.
Yeah, that's great.
And a lot of openness.
It's a team effort for sure.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, alarmed by what I see in any means, but I do want to know if there's, if the board can do something other than we need curriculum.
Yes, I was just going to say that they are very much looking forward to some new curriculum.
Yeah.
Any more?
I have one more. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have the superintendent follow-up.
There is one item that I didn't put on there because I hadn't heard back from ICRIP, but I got to talk to Vicki today at ICRIP.
Okay.
Regarding liability for us if we were to rent a van to transport students. And the liability, and what's our liability if parents opt to allow another student to transport their child to an event because we don't have a bus. And she said that the liability for always rests with the owner of the vehicle. So if a parent gives permission to another parent or another child, then that's where the liability rests. It does not come back to the district. She did suggest that if we get to the point where we're renting a van to take a small team to an event instead of a bus, that we purchase the insurance through the rental company, so that the liability then rests with that insurance. So that was just some input from her. But she definitely recognizes that we're not the only district who's reached out and asked the question. Everybody's having to get really creative. So there's nothing that we're doing that is not indefensible, I guess is what she said.
The only other thing that I didn't see a follow-up on was you were going to reach out to the district attorney for clarification, an update regarding the voting on and I think we got an email, but it's not in there. It's not on your update.
I missed it.
For the annexation, if that has to go to vote.
Oh, no,
I know we
because
got the
immediately
email.
we got the email saying it was a done deal.
Okay.
The State Department, so I didn't follow up with her, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Because she had sent the email saying that the State Department or the State Board made the decision that it was gonna fall under the other statute, and
Okay.
so it doesn't have to go to a vote.
Okay.
So I did.
Yeah, no, when we were just talking about it, I realized, yeah, we did get that, email.
Yeah, so that was good news.
Yes. Any other questions for the superintendent update? I don't think, okay. Superintendent, assistant superintendent follow-up.
Back again.
We had lots of questions the last time about curriculum, things that I couldn't answer, so.
So the first one is the illustration, so it was the one that was supposed to be downloaded, but the computer wasn't downloading, and so it's a kind of a drawing for kinder for Garwood, so I printed it so we didn't have to deal with the computer. And then the second, I can't see that the second thing on that list, the link wouldn't work. It worked originally and then it didn't, so again, this is Garwood again, it's a paragraph of the week writing, so I linked the correct one in. The Brain Pop Science, the LMS put together what exactly they would want. Their request was some more clarification specific to that, so what units they wanted to utilize from Brain Pop. And then the Lexia diagnostic pathways, so it's not a, it does say diagnostic on it, but it's not an actual diagnostic test, it's a placement test. And then it allows you, based on where you score at in rating, to have access to passages. We do have the ability to select exactly which topics we want. We can proof all of it. We can turn everything off. I'd have access, Lisa and I would have access to control, so we could pick the topics. And so originally when we talked about giving the teachers the access to have this kind of online version, so parents really liked that portion of iReady when we used it, so kids could just get in and doing some reading, that we would sift through kind of the topics, and then through our ELA committee have parents start looking at some of that material. But before we did that, we wanted to bring it to you to see if that's even a next step.
Okay.
As far as giving the teachers kind of that pathway that we had last year for specific to reading.
So there's actually a button there that you can turn off for like the social justice reform or critical race theory. They're very specific. The hot topic buttons.
And then everything is digital, so then we could proof all of it. If we chose the 6 or 7 topics, then we could read it all.
Okay. I do want to point out that, sorry, this thing is going everywhere. Where'd it go? Okay. This item request is actually an actionable item, so we'll need to remember to include it on the supplemental curriculum because it is supplemental curriculum that is being brought back up in a follow-up. Okay? Is everybody on board with that? Mm-hmm. Thank you. You wanna come on back up for the dyslexia update?
Apparently I wanted to be on the agenda tonight.
You need a rolly chair.
Okay, dyslexia update. So, in most positive way possible, we got some direction right before school started. That direction I think has changed a few times since we originally got those directions. So what we decided to do is, ISIP is our tier 1, so we were given direction specific to providing an assessment at tier 1 and then an assessment at tier 2. So ISIP was our overall measure that we give for everybody, so we did it K5. That is the directive, is we had to give an overall screener for K5. So we did that for ISIP. because our K3 was already doing it and our 4-5 had been given it in years past, and so we just decided it's a known commodity, we've already done it, it's computerized, it's not going to be a one-on-one situation. A lot of the measures that they offered were some one-on-one measures, which means it's a teacher sitting with the kid, and that's really time consuming. The tier 2 measures that they provided for us, there was one part of the tier 2 measure that they said every K through 5 had to be given an assessment called the RAN, which is like a rapid naming, and it goes through symbols, it has numbers, and it has letters. But the same test we would give for kindergartners is the same test we would give for 5th graders, and there's no norming data. And so in further discussion, there was a lot of feedback about this not being appropriate for 5th graders, not being necessarily appropriate for kindergartners. And so the state came back and said, you have to give it to everybody, but now you don't have to. When we had already made the decision, like, we're just gonna do what's appropriate for kids. And so we were gonna give it at the tier 2 level. So what we kind of landed on is we did hire proctors because most of the measures are one-on-one measures. And so at tier 1, everyone did ISIP. K5, and at tier 2 we gave a Dibbles measure, which is a diagnostic. It actually gives us much more information, and we only did it for whoever was classified as a tier 2 or a tier 3, and then we also gave them that RAN assessment. So we tried to remove as much of that we could from the teacher's plate, and so we hired proctors for all 6 buildings. The state is requiring, and they sent out a measure. There's various trainings that the 6 through 12 have to partake in. It's free at this point. It's not required until next year, but the state started sending them out. So we gave that to the secondary principals so they could start having their people. It's a 50-minute test or training. Our October days, we had our K5 participate in a half-day training that covers the measures for them. So we're just trying to meet the requirements as we go. There will be in 2025 some certification requirements for all K8. The law specifically says that it's K8 as long if you're working with K5 kids, but the state has said it has to be K8, so we're kind of playing around with that, but we're waiting until the dust settles because there's set criteria for these classes that are going to be approved, and teachers will have to pay for them because it's a 1 credit and it's part of their certification. What I don't want to have happen is we say, oh, here's the 7 that have been approved, and then they come back and say, oh, now there's only 5 approved, or oh, there's only 4 of these that are approved. Because some of the ones on the approved list, there's a lot of people are definitely divided on if it meets the dyslexia criteria in the law, and so I just want the dust to settle, and other people take these classes and make the decisions, and then our people, we recommend them, and so we're just trying to minimize, the state's just trying to figure it all out, so we're trying to minimize the impact and have it, what they're hoping for and what the law, the intent of the law, I think it's all going to be really good. It's just the implementation right now is a little bit sketchy. So
yeah, one of the things we're battling a little bit is that the State Department is requiring of us things that are not in statute, so it's their interpretation of it. And now we have a new state superintendent who will take office on January 1st, and she is very much in tune with some of the concerns around the implementation of what we're supposed to be doing. So we are waiting for Debbie to take office and to give further guidance before we jump in with both feet. One thing that we will need to do is once we get our plan finalized based on forthcoming information, we have to formalize our dyslexia plan. The board actually has to approve that.
Okay.
So that will be coming once we know that we're meeting the letter of the law.
Okay.
So we are going to try to bring in as much training as we can for teachers specific to beyond just classifying, these are the sub-tests that would show that there's a reading deficit, but then what do those interventions look like? Like, what we don't want to have happen is it's just more of the same. So we're really just trying to see what's getting posted, what's getting presented, what's getting put out there, and then we have some close contacts that were they were the authors of the law, and so I keep checking in, like, okay, this is the direction, tell me if we're on the right path, so we're just trying to do right by the letter of the law and what the intent of the law was. So we're kind of slow going it a little bit till some of those decisions get hammered out a little bit more.
We're also being really careful about how we're communicating with parents. So in our communication, we're definitely not saying to parents, your child has been diagnosed with dyslexia.
Right, yeah.
Because that is not what we are doing.
Right.
What we are doing is giving a screener and recognizing that there are some skill gaps for kids, and then we are doing a follow-up diagnostic to further drill down to see what those gaps are, and then we're writing an intervention plan to take care of the gaps. And so we're being very careful about how we're communicating with parents on that.
I appreciate the slow go, especially with anything new like that, and I just know how long we waited before, you know, the coming soon left the State Department's website. You know, and I think that was after school started.
Yes.
Right.
You
Well, and
know.
we just, we just talked about not trying to put kids through additional assessments, and if we're not doing anything, so like at this point, we don't have any direction about, so we have all this data, what do we do with it? Is anybody gonna look at it beyond just us? And I mean, if I'm being transparent, we probably won't spend a lot of time looking at the RAN. It's not all that appropriate for certain grade levels. And so just, again, how much assessing are you doing? Are we putting these kids through? And then what do we do with that information? And so as the state is figuring out that piece, we're just kind of sitting back and waiting. And then again, the hope is that we're gonna have really solid, we'll come up with a template for what those plans look like and what best practices are based on what some of these sub-tests show. And so we're really, helping, doing what the intent of the law is saying, but at this point it's just hard because the measures are not all that great at this point, in my opinion. Some of them are, but some of them I just feel like it's a little bit more of the same, and so it's what we've always done, and that wasn't the intent of the law. It was that we were doing a better job of really being able to identify, and teachers really understood the long-term impact of some of those dyslexia, attributes. So.
Yeah, it seemed like it would also be to frustration to the teachers too, if they were stuck in this, back and forth until it was all figured out.
Yeah, we've tried to protect them as much as possible, and they absolutely don't want to feel like they're diagnosing, and so we've just, we didn't send out a formal letter. We just said, if parents are asking, we're being super transparent about what we're doing, but it is a sub-test, it is a reading test.
Sure, yeah.
And so, until there's a little bit more defined parameters that are more appropriate, we're just, again, taking it slow.
I appreciate you staying on top of it.
Yes, thank you. Anybody else have any further questions? Okay. Moving on to approve the capital outlay request. We didn't get a layout of what it was that we approved, so we'll have to,
We didn't actually approve anything.
no, I know. At the workshop, we
What we talked about.
determined what we'd like to do, but nothing was prepared with that. So we need to take action on what we'd like to do with the schools.
Moving forward.
Yes.
I believe our discussion was $500,000 to each school. Isn't that what we?
Well, we picked 3 schools.
Yeah,
to be
Spirit
the
Lake,
standards.
Athol,
And
and
they're not all the same
the
amount.
junior high.
We talked about $425,000 to Spirit Lake Elementary, $450,000 to Athol, $900,000 to Lakeland Middle School for the exterior, and then $315,000 for the doors. That was
Oh, yeah,
that was
the
just
door was already- yeah.
the doors and
Yeah.
Okay, wait a minute.
Say again.
Please.
all of it.
Well, okay, so-
$425,000 to
Alright.
Spirit Lake Elementary for siding and
Which is this
Trim
this
outside.
photo right here.
Yep. And then $450 to Athol for the same siding and trim.
Okay, okay, the reason I was asking is because I thought we were doing siding, trim, and exterior doors. Because we're doing the exterior doors at the middle school.
Right.
That's what I thought, so it would be $450 for siding, $425 for siding and trim, and $250 for exterior doors at Spirit Lake. And then at Athol, $450 for siding and trim and $250 for exterior doors.
I don't remember that being part of the
Okay.
part of the conversation. The
Okay,
exterior doors for the 2 elementary schools, definitely Lakeland Middle School, but
And
I
that's-
don't
that's
have
al-
it written down.
Middle school's
I mean,
already underway, so.
right,
Yeah.
the doors are already a done
Mhm.
deal. But the siding and trim was up to 900,000 for the middle school.
Mhm.
Okay, so then, do we need to have further discussion on Spirit Lake and Ethel of what we're authorizing? Cause what was my understanding was Bob had made the suggestion that maybe we look at allocating $500,000 to the schools to accomplish as much as they possibly
Right.
could.
Mhm.
But I remember being like, nope, we need the siding, the trim, and the doors, and, what do we do if in the middle of the project we're running out of money and, we've got half a building done and maybe one door. So, I thought our conversation ended with moving forward with those 3 schools for those projects specific. But, because it was gonna be like 9, or not, it was gonna take,
2.09 million.
yeah, it was gonna
2.09.
it was gonna take pretty much the 2 million,
Pretty much.
over the 2 million that we'd already set
Right, but
aside.
if you add the $250,000
Twice.
twice, that's another $500,000, and that bumps it up to 2.5 million, almost 2.6 million.
One of the reasons I made the suggestion that I did, and it occurred to me after the workshop, even more thinking about it, those buildings, particularly Spirit Lake and Athol, there's as much as 25 to 30 years difference in the age of, doors and exterior and so on and so forth. And so my thinking was, you take a hard look at that and you replace and fix anything that obviously needs it, but not necessarily ripping off good siding, just because we wanna say we did that.
Right.
I mean, that's a little bit of a waste of money. So that's why I suggested, allocating an amount of money and then work through the process of identifying what really needs to take place. Right now, we just have a blanket, siding and trim. But that, that maybe that's 2/3 of the building, or maybe it's 50% of the building.
Right, but I recall, Mike talking about the fact that, those doors and the whole thing is, that they kind of go hand in hand.
And I'm sure some of them, that he's correct
Because of
about
the
that,
age.
One that was built in 1968 versus one that was built in 1992.
Right, right.
The one in 68 will be in better shape probably.
What was that?
The one in 68 will probably be in better shape.
That's possible.
Higher
They
quality
made
work back
better
then, yeah.
materials in those days.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so then how do we wanna proceed?
Because what was our final number that we had, what was that on
I
the
believe that
transfer calculation
other
part
sheet
of
is
that?
there.
I think that was it.
The amount to transfer was $2,658,957.
And did that included the 313,000 for the doors at the middle school?
This is just the
Oh,
transfer
That's
from
the what the transfer was, that's what
That's
we
what we
took from
said.
fund balance.
Yeah.
Didn't the board talk about actually transferring the full 2.8 million and being okay with this, coming out of the fund balance, and it would be a little bit less than the 16%?
I think we did talk about that.
We did.
Is that the superintendent's recommendation?
Yes.
Okay. I'm good with that.
Yeah, and we are going, depending on what the board decides in the December board meeting, we are going to be going to our patrons for a renewal of the supplemental levy, possibly the plant facility levy, depending on what you guys do, and I do think it doesn't bode well for us if we are not presenting to our patrons what we're doing to take care of the buildings we have, so.
So that would, if we did that amount there, that would I mean, we'd be what, 20,000 shy, $19,800 shy of the 2.9. Is that what we just said, or 2.7?
2.5.
If we did the doors,
2.6.
yeah, it would be
Okay.
2.6.
So we would be able to do everything that we talked about if we did that full recommendation. Okay.
Keeping in mind, that's the high side estimate.
That's the
Right.
high side estimate.
Correct.
These are also estimates, and it
Right.
could be higher than the high estimate. So
Correct.
that's my concern, is that only leaves us 200,000 wiggle room if something worse is under there and we have a serious issue that we uncover. Only leaves us $200,000 to address that, or any other major system failure at any of the schools for the entire year.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't feel like it gives us enough.
Cushion.
A safety net. The other part that we talked about was more than likely these funds wouldn't be expended until next year because the work's not gonna be done until summer.
True.
And we also will have, we'll use ESSER funds to, pay
Right.
for staff and be able to then move more funds, so, we do have that, to fully use the ESSER $3 this year. After we do our curriculum.
Maybe to clarify Ramona's question about where the dollars come from for the doors that we've already authorized. That's going to be paid out of, kind of the run out of the plant facilities funds, am I thinking?
No, not that much. We could have a little bit that could cover that, but we never anticipated that it'd be 300,000 for those doors, so. You know, we definitely can help defray some of those costs with the final plant facility fund. It's running, you know, we're getting some of the bill that, you know, that we just paid for the Betty Keeper roof and the John Brown roof,
Okay.
so it's starting to wind down.
Okay.
But the
So-
original intent though was for it to come out of the plant facility, those funds.
I think that was with about Mr. Ferriola, original estimate was, you know, around $150,000, not 320.
I hear what
Yeah.
you're saying.
So yes, I just said that we would be able to do some out of the plant facility fund, but not all.
Okay, that's fair. And then we'd be looking at the transfer monies to pay for the remainder of it.
Correct, yeah, and I haven't made that transfer yet. I was waiting for this board meeting for the final number.
Didn't we give direction, isn't this the same amount of money that when we've had, a meeting a while back, remember we had that really large fund balance, and we said we should start,
This is that money.
yeah,
We were just-
land or
yeah.
building maintenance fund or
Mhm.
whatever, and set that aside, and then we still had a fairly large amount of money? No?
It's all the same money.
No.
I thought there was more left, okay.
No, I think what you're thinking is, when we talked about the transfer, that would go into a special designated fund.
Mhm.
And Brian is planning on doing that.
Correct, and we wanted to wait
Yeah.
until the final audit to really know where we truly ended with our
Okay.
fund balance.
Mhm.
So we really didn't know that till October, you know, when you present
Yeah.
with that
Yeah.
information, and so.
Okay,
So you're kinda half right.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so, but it was, yeah,
I
it's
just
just,
know we had all these conversations.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the workshop, I actually brought that point up, asking the board to make a decision about whether we were going to hold some money back for land or
Right.
building purchases. And the conversation was, we really owe it to the patrons to use the money that we have to take care of the buildings that we have.
Yeah, I can't argue with that thought process.
Do we need a two-step process? That's kind of a separate question. Two-step process here. Since we have a recommendation to transfer 2.8,
Mhm.
which is different from
2.6.
the amount that the budget shows.
No, the 2.8 is actually what the budget shows. The 2.6 is what the actual amount after the budget,
Oh,
after
okay,
the
okay, all right.
the audit was completed,
You're
is
right.
the 2.6.
Okay, okay. So that transfer can take place without any further authorization, I guess that's where I was going.
Well, it's
Yeah.
budgeted, we can
It's-
approve it or not.
Yeah, it's,
We
well,
still
it's
would need
approved
to
in the
approve
budget, so we've approved it essentially.
Correct, just wanted to get yeah, and the amount, that was just if the board wanted to hold at the 16.6% fund balance, then it's the 2.6. So we'd be a little bit, we'd be at 16.2% or whatever that would calculate out to.
Which, at one of the classes, this is kind of going off on a trail, but, I took one of the classes by an auditing group, today. And he was talking about the fact that boards really need to consider what they're holding, aside in the, fund balance, yes, but it's the whatever. Anyway, because I asked the question, I'm like, well, we do 8 to 16.67%, and he was totally shocked. So,
Too much or too little?
well, he said that approximately 6 months ago, it was 6 months that you want to have set aside, but given the cost of inflation, given the pandemic, given the spiral that we are currently in, and no one really knows where it's going, that he said, you know, you really need to reconsider what you're doing. So I'm like, interesting.
So he's suggesting that we need more
More.
of a fund balance?
That's not how I took it.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure. Going to follow up with him tomorrow.
Well, because our 16.67 is 2 months technically, so if
Mhm.
you say in 6 months, we needed,
More.
3 times that much.
Right.
Yeah.
But he was also saying it's relevant to the size of district you have. You know,
Right.
he was comparing to Ada, which we're nowhere near
No.
that.
Yeah.
So it was like, whoa.
Was he
alright then.
an auditor?
Yes,
Accountant?
he was an auditor.
You know, the customary recommendation for private business is 3 to 6 months of, you know, in reserves for operating capital.
Okay.
Government agencies rarely ever reach that kind of level. It's very hard to justify that with your patrons.
Right.
Well,
Right.
the public thinks we have over $14
I
million
know.
in a rainy day fund.
Right.
Right.
Let's use that money.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Why don't we have another school built by now? Then?
Yeah,
If
right.
we have $14 million sitting in a rainy day
Maybe it's
fund.
raining out there.
It's raining like a son of a gun.
Our bridge is washed away, that's all I can say. So in answer to your question, Bob, I do think we need to, because this is an actionable item, I do think we need to take action on what we are approving to transfer over, and then what we are directing the district to repair at the school.
I'll move to approve that we transfer $2,880,200 from fund balance.
From the general fund to the special account.
Yes.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Then we need a motion with regard to what we are, spending those funds on. With regard to the maintenance and repairs of our schools.
What's your total there?
$2,090,000.
Well, what's the fourth item? Middle school?
The middle school doors.
Oh, that includes the doors.
Yep.
Okay.
2.6.
But that's already been authorized.
Mhm.
So whatever we do now will be just the other two schools and whatever we do. Okay.
So do you wanna add the extra 250,000 apiece for doors?
Can I ask just a quick question? When we approved the Lakeland High School track, were we thinking we were using these dollars, or where was that coming from? Cause
Good
that
question.
also was approved, and those dollars are being expended.
Yeah, I assumed it was coming from here.
Is that what we were doing, Brian?
We could either use that from the transfer or we just use it from fund balance. I thought I recalled from previous board meetings and conversations that it's just gonna come from fund balance, but.
That's what I thought as well.
Yeah, because I think the rationale with that was technically because the public can,
Already approved.
and,
It's a
you
public-
know,
yeah.
the district had made that commitment,
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, we would just take it out of there. So, I guess the other question would be is if we approve what we just transferred, approved to transfer, plus the, track would come out of just the fund balance, that would put us back to you, and like Randy said, that doesn't leave any wiggle room, in case something would happen. I mean, do you foresee any issue? I know you don't have a magic ball, the crystal ball to look in, but.
Yeah, I mean, I guess certainly if something, urgent came up, we would, obviously have the conversation, with the board to see if you need to shift and prioritize based on new circumstances. I mean, that's sometimes, you have to do that. We certainly, as, our plan, as we, have some of these projects going is to, do a RFQ for a construction manager, general contractor, so we work with one contractor for the 3 projects, advertise for that, so we get we'll select the contractor by their qualifications, and so as they start working with us on specs and stuff like that information, we'll have a good idea of where the dollars are coming, and that if the numbers are coming in because material costs and labor costs are really super, super high, and that we couldn't do all 3, we'd know that before we went out to bid, and so we could certainly have a heads up for the board on, if we have to adjust our thinking of the projects because of the economics.
Using that scenario, Brian, excuse me, would we be looking at the 3 projects as one or 3 individual projects, do you think?
I think when we do the advertisement, we're gonna do it for, one contractor for the 3 projects, but we'd look at each project individually.
Yeah.
Even though I think a lot of them, obviously, when we're looking like at Spirit Lake and Athol, it's pretty similar type thing that we're looking at. I think it'll be pretty easy. It's not a, I don't think we're gonna need an architect involved and things like that. So.
We've got somebody who knows how to write the specs, that's critical.
Right,
Yeah.
right, and so we'll be, we'll definitely be getting the, the contractor on board who would say, this is the type of work that we're looking to have done, and they would, help us get the specs. We needed to bring in, an architect on some of the things that gets that level of detail. I'd probably reach out to Architects West, who I'm sure would help us out.
Yeah. For sake of discussion, I would move that we authorize $1.7 million for the 3 projects that we've talked about. Athol, Spirit Lake, and middle school exterior siding, fascia, and trim. where we go with the doors, you know, doors could be included if the bids are right, but there's a lot to work through there.
So your 1.7 is about 575,000 short of including the doors, cause when I add the, siding and trim and the doors for everything and then the 900,000 for the middle school, I come up with 2.275.
Yeah. You know, I gotta go, I threw a motion out, we can deal with that however you want.
I'm just trying to figure out where you came up with 1.7.
I'm looking at the exterior siding and trim.
Okay.
The other could be included depending on, you know, depending on the needs of each building. You know, I go back to the point I made earlier that, were these estimates based on doing the whole building, you know, do you think, Brian? Because I have a hard time reconciling that, I guess, in my mind.
Yes, I mean, I think it was within the last 12 months, Mike got a rough estimate from General Construction on what it'd take to re-side and do the trim at Athol.
The entire building.
Correct. And so we sort of extrapolated some of that initial estimate to that Spirit Lake is roughly the same size of building and that Lakeland Middle is bigger, so it was really like a square footage estimate. But, you know, we didn't, and that was looking at, you know, an equal material on the side, you know, not upgrading or anything like that.
Right,
So
right.
we certainly, as we work through the process, could say, well, what would it be if you know, had a, you know, hardy siding or, you know, as opposed to the with the T111 and things like that. I mean, it could be part of the conversation as you work with your contractor.
You know, once again, at least 50% of Athol, for example, is far newer than the old portion of Athol. So just as an example, if the estimate was based on 100% replacement, but you only need to replace 60%, then the bill ought to be 40% less than what the estimate is, assuming all things being equal.
Right.
And therefore, then, you know, if you have X number of dollars to work with and you can do that and want to include door replacement, that's fine, we could do that too. But I just think we need to go on a fixed dollar amount.
Okay. So your motion again is the 1,700,000 for replacement of just siding and siding and trim. Okay, so without
No, you
inclusion
can
of the
include, you can include
doors.
the doors too, if you like, in that.
Well, I'm just saying, if we don't include it, then they are not obligated to do that, and it's been my experience from the past, which I know we're not back there, that when, you know, things come in short, we just hoard that money way over in some other account, and it doesn't get accounted for. So, I wanna be very specific, I really believe that the siding, trim, and doors need to be addressed.
I would accept that.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor for 1,700,000 for siding, trim, and doors, to include Athol Elementary, Spirit Lake Elementary, and the Lakeland Middle School. Is there a second?
So just to clarify, you wanna, you're going short on the money, right? And you don't wanna go short because you wanna make sure it's covered. But if it comes in short, then you wanna make sure that that money doesn't go somewhere else.
If it comes in short, I don't mind the money going back into the account it's supposed to be in, at all. My concern is if we don't specify doors, the money will come back in and the doors will be another project for another day somewhere down the road when we are like, hey, can we do the doors? That's been the history of the past. I don't know that that would actually occur this time because I think there is more diligence in ensuring that these schools get up to par. I just wanna make sure that we're all on board with the fact that this needs to happen, and the way to make it happen is to include them.
Did we not already approve the doors?
For the middle school.
Yeah.
For the middle school, yes, not for the other two.
Right, okay.
So, I mean, when I went through and added all the doors and siding and trim for the 2 elementaries and then added the 900,000 for the middle school, I came up with 2.27. When I add the siding and trim for the the 2 elementaries and then the 1 middle school, I come up to 1,775. So we're still short on even those bids. But I can respect going more conservative. I can respect that, I really can. I just wanna make sure it happens. That the work gets done. And that we're not coming back to this a year later saying, okay, now we need to look at the doors.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement on that,
Okay.
pretty much.
So your figure, Randy, the 2090, was the 313,000 for the middle school doors also?
Yes.
Okay. And Trustee Jones's motion is with the assumption that we, in regards to the doors, doesn't include the already approved
That's
doors.
correct, that's correct.
So basically, it's the same amount of money, pretty much. Okay, I just wanted to get that in my head clear. Okay, let's see.
So if there is no second, then the motion dies.
Mm-hmm. I'll second.
I just said.
Oh, I thought you said if we don't have a
I
second.
did say it.
Okay.
Alright, so, hearing a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Congratulations, we're moving forward.
And we will be diligent in reporting back to the board where we are each step of the way so that
Okay.
you are assured that doors are part of the project.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And to Brian's point, if we secure the general contractor and the specs and then the bids come in and we're off, we would bring that back to the board for you to make, to give us direction on how you want to move forward. You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, we're not just
Got
gonna
it.
do a whole bunch of change orders and
Yeah.
adding
yeah.
and adding and adding.
Okay.
No.
Can I click on it?
That transfer calculation page again, okay, so that leaves it. Okay. Thank you.
It leaves about $1 million
Yeah.
in there.
Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda. Oh, you have to go back, the backwards arrow to get out of it to go back to board book. I don't know why it does that. There you are. It's okay, I spent the same multiple clicks, hoping it would come. So on the consent agenda, we have the minutes from the previous meeting. The minutes of the subcommittee need to be accepted. HR items, regular and special bills. Do we have any comments or questions on any of the minutes? Start there first. The only thing I wanted to have corrected on the meeting minutes for the regular board meeting is under K.2 SDIT. The statement is that the district is not comfortable with allowing the SDIT. I don't think it had anything to do with comfortability. I believe it's more that the board, it's not the district, it was the board did not approve the use of SDIT. So Rosanna, if you can get that changed.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. So we have the accepted minutes for subcommittee meetings. Any comments or questions on those? Okay. HR items, we have the alternate authorization. Any questions on that? Any questions? Okay. The stipend supplemental contracts. I do have some questions on this. What is Mad Coffee?
That is Timberlake High School's business that the students run, where they sell coffee. They have a nice little coffee stand right in the kind of the foyer of the school.
Okay, that wasn't on the negotiated agreement. So why are we stipending it? I don't understand.
Well, so within the negotiated agreement, we have the normal, like at the elementary level, the yearbook and the intramurals, those things happen every year. But then we also have extra pay for extra duty that the principals have control over, and they can give stipends for those things.
Okay, well, how are we coming up with the amount that we're paying?
Principals
Are just
have that
choosing what to pay.
discretion. And
Okay.
we have encouraged the principals to think about the amount of time it takes outside of contract time to do whatever it is that they're doing. And we use like a $25 per hour kind of calculation.
Okay. Greenhouse duties?
Extra pay for extra duty.
Okay, $1,200 though for greenhouse duties?
Those, yeah, the principals have discretion over those, so.
And juggling club. So I think on these student clubs, there's not.
We've
we're
never
not-
approved a
no.
juggling club, so I can't approve a stipend
Yeah, that one, it doesn't ring a bell
for that.
It's a John Brown Elementary.
Well, what is it? I mean,
Yeah, that one I don't know.
okay. And then the senior project facilitator. Senior project's something we require because of
Graduation
standards,
requirements.
right? Okay,
Statute, yeah.
right, so we have to pay someone, I mean, it looks like we're paying about a little over $1,500 for something that we're required. So this is going above and beyond class time for these kids as well? Isn't there I thought there was a senior project class.
So this is for Timberlake High School.
Okay,
And the person who oversees that program is a classified person in our library.
okay,
And so she typically has kids in the library after school working on their senior paper or the project, and provides assistance to make sure that kids are meeting the rubrics and the targets so that they can pass that senior project and graduate. she then also oversees the actual presentation of the senior project, so she does all of the scheduling, and the planning for that. So it is all outside of her, time.
Superintendent Arnold, can I intervene?
Yes.
The senior project facilitator is one that is specified in the negotiated agreement.
Okay.
And each high school does have a percentage
Okay.
based on their population.
Okay.
And so, yes, the senior facilitator over at Lakeland High School, excuse me, is Mrs. Hall.
Okay.
Over there, she is, and then Mountain View has a smaller percentage,
Okay.
but both of those things are in the negotiated agreement.
Okay. Was building leadership? Because I didn't see that in the
No,
negotiated
building
agreement.
leadership is actually a part of that extra pay for extra duty. So each building is allocated a certain amount of dollars that has been at the building principal's discretion for the extra things that are specific to their schools.
Okay. What about garden?
Same thing, garden club started basically over at John Brown Elementary with Mrs. Fonda Mondew, and she would be coming over on the weekends and during the summertime to maintain that garden. We have, I think Athol Elementary has a community garden as well. So again, it's just building specific.
Okay, but if we're calling them clubs and they haven't been approved by the board,
Right.
that's a bit of a challenge to pay for a stipend with something that's not approved.
Yeah. So I guess I don't know if that has been, that's just what it's been called over history, so I don't know if there's an actual club per se, or if it's just we have a teacher that's overseeing that, so.
Well, we've got Capture the Flag. Is that a club?
It's at, again, at John Brown Elementary.
Okay.
Yes, at the elementary level, they've done things after school to support kids, and so, and to provide fun opportunities for them to engage in the school. So, while they call it a club, I don't know that it functions like a club at the high school level functions, because it's definitely not student initiated. It's a teacher who sees a need, who goes to the principal and says, we have several kids who are interested in helping with the community garden. I'm happy to supervise them, and so they meet once a week and they'll do those things outside of school time. We've not historically, because they don't function as a club like they do at the high school level, they've never come to the board. If we want them to, we certainly can. It's just they definitely function differently than they do at the high school.
Okay, but if we're calling it a club
No,
and we're paying money for it, which none of the clubs that have come before us have indicated that there is a financial component, but yet I show on here there's the chess club.
Capture the Flag.
Yeah, math club, quiz team. There was no financial component on any of those clubs that came to us. So if they're not at the high school and they're not being paid for, but they're at the elementary and they're still clubs, they still need to come before the board so the board's aware of what's going on and that there is a financial component. Because it's my understanding there isn't.
Right, they just are not. They're not clubs like we have at the high school level. That they call it that just because they come together. It's just always been, since we've been doing extra pay for extra duty, since I was a principal, which was a long time ago. At the elementary level, it's like homework club. It's not really a club. It's kids stay after school to get help with homework at the elementary level, and a teacher or two will stay after and work with kids. But they call it a club, and it's not actually a club. So
I noticed we're paying for a juggling club. I wonder if we can learn something about how we can juggle finances to make it work better.
yeah. So just I guess to give the board a little bit of historical perspective. So in the negotiated agreement, it used to be And this started, I think, when Mr. Kinsey was the superintendent, and I don't know that we did it when you were. That people could apply if they had an idea for a way to serve their school and serve their students with something that was outside of the regular school day. So they would apply, and then the superintendent and the president of the association would meet. All applications had to be in by September 15th. Then the two of those people would meet, and they would go through and they would identify which applications they were going to approve and pay for the extra duty that people were offering to provide. When Dr. Meyer came to Lakeland 7 years ago, she sat down with Mr. Wallace and said, this has been a practice for a long time, a decade probably. Instead of us having to, who have nothing to do with school and don't know which things are priorities, instead of us approving them, can we take these dollars that we've historically paid, which was like $138,000, and figure out, she asked Brian, will you figure out a formula for disbursement based on per student, per capita, and so each school then got a line item in their budget to use for extra pay for extra duty, so that it wasn't having to come at the district level. So that's the why behind it, and that's how it kind of started.
So then is all of this being paid out of building budget? Or is it coming out of the district office?
It's a building budget of district money.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, it's part of their building budget.
okay. And having never seen a building budget and what's actually there, okay. That's where the gray area is.
Yes. Right.
Some of these activities were passion projects, like, kids that wanted to learn how to sew, so some buildings said, we're gonna do a 6-week sewing class, and so it's
Cooking.
a few years, probably 5 years ago, Garwood would do like an enrichment, a 6-week, and so there were various things that kids were interested in, and so, I mean, it's kind of been different as at the elementary for a while. It was just based on really what the kids wanted, and again, one year we pushed service projects, and so teachers would come together and kids were like, we wanna pick up trash, or we wanna plant flowers, or those kinds of things. So not a traditional club, and not all of them even go the whole year. Sometimes it's just a season, and it's based on, kids and parents and specific to that school.
Well, Mad Coffee's on there 3 times.
We have 3 facilitators that trade off overseeing the business with the students.
I hear they make good coffee.
They make great coffee.
I don't drink
I have
coffee, so.
partaken on a number of occasions.
It's actually a great entrepreneurial opportunity for the kids.
And what does the building leadership do again? I think I remember that discussion, but.
They could sit on the RTI team, so they come in early every week to talk about kids who are not meeting their benchmarks and look at interventions.
Yeah.
It could be, at the high school level, it's usually somebody from each department meeting with the principal once a week to talk about how do we improve our school, how do we improve access for kids with regard to their learning. So, and all of those meetings happen outside of contract time. We have ripped the Band-Aid off this year because the state is no longer funding leadership stipends. So those things that have historically been paid through leadership stipends, those are gone, and the principals are trying to use their little line item to continue to pay those people who put in a lot of extra time to make sure that they're taking good care of kids. Where the state used to fund those stipends, and so we are weaning people off of that idea of stipend, definitely having conversations about it. Sometimes we just do the work because it's the right work to do and not necessarily needing to be paid for it, the extra work.
Well, I do commend you that the stipend balances have come down.
They're still
significantly,
right,
but they're still pretty high.
There. And this year's, are the November stipends are in here?
Yeah, they're at the very top.
So it's high because the board, well, the governor put the money in for that, the bonuses, and then the board approved for the rest of the staff to get those. So those are one-time things that won't be happening next year.
Does anybody else have any comments on the stipends? Okay.
I don't think the board has any problem with any club or passion project or any of that. I think that a lot of the questions is just trying to understand the bucket of money, right? But also that the state only gives us so much money for education, which includes none of this. And given the financial and economic times we're in, the money that comes to the district doesn't include sports, doesn't include clubs, doesn't include any of those things, and we have a lot of needs. We have building needs, we have curriculum needs. I mean, preaching in the choir, right? And I think that's, I know I feel the pressure even with talking about going to the constituents in the district asking for even the levy money, you know, and then to, you know, I think it's just a, you know, we came through a pandemic and now we're going into this lovely economic situation that we're in. I think it's just hard right now. So I don't want people to, at least from my perspective, I don't see it as the board is anti-club or anti-passion project, gardening, whatever. It's not that. It's, we have a lot of needs at the moment, and, you know, yeah, the governor might give us a chunk of money, but then they take away all of this money. So,
Right.
Or they give us money and it has strings
Yeah,
attached to it, and you can only use it for certain things.
Right.
So I do know that CFO Wallace will begin meeting with the people within the community who are interested in being on the budget committee. And we've talked about what that looks like moving, you know, through the school year.
Yeah.
And this can absolutely be a topic of conversation with that committee. Is this something that we find worthwhile? I know we love workshops, but at some point it's probably prudent for Brian to be able to pull up like Betty Kiefer's building budget and talk about the dollars that are there, so you can see them and understand what that is. And we can do the same with the two high schools, so that you have a better idea of these buckets of money that we're talking about.
And the expectation of what is supposed to come out of that,
Right.
too, I think is,
Right.
is
Mhm.
definitely helpful.
So we can certainly do that, but I hear what you're saying, and you know, finding that balance of,
Right.
I guess, you know, when I first got into education, we didn't get paid for any of the things that we did outside of the regular hours. We just did it because it was the right thing to do, and then the governor put the leadership stipends in place, and it kind of trained people to think that if I'm going to do extra, you have to pay me for it. And so now we're trying to figure out how to work back from that.
It's very hard to pull back.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And with respect to the building budgets, I mean, I don't know exactly where that came into being, somewhere obviously after I was superintendent, because we didn't do that in my tenure. District monies were district monies. If you wanted to expend district monies, you needed to come and ask, explain what you're planning on doing. You know, and I understand it's kind of a participatory management style, you know, to give the building principals a little more reign on what goes on in their building and what money gets spent for. And I'm not opposed to that, but I do think we need to be well informed about it.
Exactly.
Well, and I would tell you that those budgets went up drastically when Dr. Meyer came. There was a lot of, prior to Becky being here, when I was a principal at Betty Kiefer, we had I had some money for furniture and equipment, and that was the only thing I could spend that money on. And then I had instructional supply budget, and it was for Betty Kiefer. We were the second largest school in the district at that time. It was less than $10,000. And then if there was something bigger that we were working toward, then I had to come over and talk to the superintendent and then the business manager to talk about what I was trying to accomplish and if the district could help. So the big, like really big capital type projects at buildings, any playground equipment or those kinds of things had to come to the district level. And when Becky came, a lot of that moved to the building, so the principals definitely had more control over a much larger budget to take care of some of those things. So we can look at that, and as a board, you guys can help kind of decide what is appropriate, and recognizing that we are going to have to tighten. I had this conversation with Brian just this week. We are going to have to tighten our belt even with the $9.52 million levy, if that's what the board approves and the patrons vote in favor of that, it will require us to tighten our belts with just the cost of everything right now. So we have to look at everything.
We do. Any further comments on the stipends? Any comments on the resignations? I'm glad to see there's not a plethora.
Yeah, me too.
Or me.
Any comments on the memo? No.
Nope.
Any comments on the regular and special bills?
I was happy to see more curriculum being purchased. But then I did have some questions on some of these things. I just don't ever remember seeing them, like the Generation Genius, the online science curriculum.
That was approved last year.
Oh, was it? Okay. I just didn't, it didn't ring a bell. I don't remember seeing it before.
The board approved it last year because our science teachers were struggling with not having a science textbook that was aligned to the standards they were supposed to be teaching.
Oh yeah, I think I do remember that now. Yeah, okay. The name didn't ring a bell to me.
I have a question. On the bills, it says Moose Coffee Supplies. So are we buying the supplies and then they're making money?
Is that, I don't.
And then we're paying the stipend too?
Brian can answer the question as to whether that comes out of there, if that's a.
Yeah, that's a, that was a district check, so it would have been from Timberlake's principal supply budget.
Mountain View, isn't it?
That's
It's
Mountain View.
Oh,
Mountain View,
Moose,
that's
oh yeah,
Moose.
that'd be Mountain View. That'd be,
And
sorry.
they
That's
don't
not
get paid a
Timberlake's.
stipend.
Yep, so, yeah,
It says coffee supplies though.
right, so Mountain View also has a little business that the students are running. So that check, that was the question that I had, that check is actually it's a Mountain View, I mean, it's district funds, but it's a Mountain View instructional, supply.
Part of the building budget.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
So they buy the materials and then the whatever profits the kids make go back into that budget that they're buying the materials from.
I don't understand, and maybe it's just the way it's worded. It says Terry's Dairy, there's 2 checks, it's over $7,000. Terry's Dairy, it says food service milk grant. So, I don't understand that logic. Are we receiving a milk grant to purchase milk? Or?
No, I'm not
okay.
sure why it'd be say milk grant, that should just be milk purchases, so.
Okay.
You know, Annette
So there's
hand
no
types that
grant.
in,
Okay.
not for milk. The one grant that we have is the fresh,
Produce.
fruit and vegetable grant
Right.
for Spirit Lake and Athol. That's really the only.
Okay, cause I couldn't understand why we were spending money for a grant. That didn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
But
I think
if it's
that's just
Okay,
typo.
okay. And then I thought we had agreed not to purchase charter buses anymore? That the district would not be paying for that?
I don't remember that
I thought we talked about that because you,
Well,
That was-
we talked about it in the context of if we got these new buses that we were talking about, then we wouldn't have to.
okay,
pay that.
okay.
Yeah, so if we go further than Lewiston, so however far away that is, 120 miles, whatever that is, that we don't take the yellow buses and we charter buses. So anytime we go to Boise for state, that's what we have to, we're chartering.
We're just not doing the overnight trips anymore.
Okay, the
Charters,
district's
but-
not paying for it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, the kids
We're
are funded.
we're still doing the state and
Okay, the state competition.
state competition.
The valuation report 21-22 for $7,500. What was that?
That's
For
our
Actuaries Northwest.
actuarial report, required every other year.
Okay.
Part of the audit that we have to have our post-employment benefit actuaries calculated.
Okay.
So yeah, it's every other year that's a bill that comes up. So next year we'll get a smaller bill from Northwest Valuations. They don't have to do the full study, but every other year they have to. So that
Okay.
was a change in GASB several years ago.
Okay. We never saw that report, correct? The board?
It was part of the audit report.
It was part of the audit?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
so it's in there.
Okay. And then for the Murray group, I know they're kind of our go-to people for employment law, I
For
think.
insurance, no, they're insurance.
Okay.
Mhm.
Employee navigator admin fee, I haven't seen that before. What
That's
is that?
our HR benefits portal,
Okay,
where employees sign up for benefits.
so it's just a program,
Correct.
okay. Okay, those are all my questions. Anybody else have any questions on the bills? Okay. Or the utilities? Alright, having gone through the consent agenda, I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second it.
Having motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Moving on to new business. Need a motion to either approve or deny the emergency snow closure for 11/8/2022.
Move to approve the emergency snow closure for 11/8/22.
Second. Having a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Moving on to the supplemental resources for board consideration. Does anybody have any comments, questions? One book, it's on Common Lit.
That's actually a site.
Yeah, but, yeah, it said, Mr. Dirty dressed in an old t-shirt and jeans slouched over a cheap sex novel. This is an elementary book.
It's a site and you can pull up books, so they had to have pulled up one book. It's just a site so you
Okay.
can access books.
So we have a librarian here.
Okay.
It's also, so you have to realize that the Common Lit, is for the elementary school, and when, some of the people were reviewing that, they were going into the areas where our elementary schools are not gonna be going. When I reviewed it, I looked at the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, which
Okay.
I thought was extremely appropriate. I didn't go into the 9th grade stuff because it wasn't for the high school. It was strictly for the elementary school. So that's where I kept my, my focus on looking at all of the curriculum that was there.
Can we turn off the access to, at the elementary level, would they still be able to see, can they click on the 9th grade?
I did not contact anybody did I contact anybody? I contacted somebody on the list, I don't remember which one it was, but, I don't know if you can turn anything off, but I was focusing mainly on the 4th, 5th, or the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. I didn't go into any of the older stuff because I thought this is for the elementary.
Right.
I don't need to be in there. I need to be focusing on what elementary is going to be doing. So, and what they're gonna be looking at. And all of their stuff was wonderful. I loved all the stuff. I went on and did some lessons and did some things like that, and was very impressed with what they had.
And we just talked about staying within your grade band.
Well, we can't look at any of the target lessons, just so you know, because we have to have an account to log in. So I'm not sure who found what where.
No, I'm not either. I created an account and I
Oh,
went in
okay.
and looked at it.
Okay,
That's what I did.
okay. That seems to be the only. Just one quick question for Lakeland Middle School. There's 2 links and it's for the same,
Which one?
if you go down to
Different
LMS.
ones.
It's not. They're 2 different ones. Those are my magazines.
Okay, what am I missing? Oh, okay, you're right there. The pictures are different.
They just
I
look
just
the
saw
same.
Anne Frank.
Mhm.
Okay, I just
It's
wanted
two
to make
different
sure.
Anne Frank. I had the same when I first opened it, and I had to put them side by side because I'm like, these look really alike.
Yeah, okay.
So I think how they probably got there for that, if you scroll down the first page of that Common Lit, even if you choose 3rd grade, there's a social emotional learning section for 3rd grade. You click on it, or it says 3rd through 11th, and then that's where the self-concept and the complexity of fear and all that
I do
come up.
remember. I do remember.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Trustee Grissom. I do remember I did contact Common Lit to see if they could shut stuff off. As soon as you said that, I remembered.
Oh.
She said that they were not able to, but it was something they were going to take back to their program because they had had a lot of questions on that, with regards to people wanting to be able to shut certain portions of Common Lit off. But yes,
I'm sorry, what's your name again?
Janelle Dexter.
Thank you. G-I-N-E-L.
So how will, how will this be used, this Common Lit?
I'm not at the elementary school, so
Okay.
I am not quite sure.
Do we know how this is gonna be? I mean, is this browsing in the library? Is this for teachers to actually use for
They
lesson
have some really
planning?
good lessons and
Okay.
specific to text and specific to just going deeper with their standards. So it's just gonna accompany just like the
I see.
journeys material they're
Okay.
using. So it just goes a little bit more in depth. There's more lexile levels. So
Chair Thompson, Janelle's here tonight because she read several of the tabled books, and so she's here to just present that information for your consideration.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
So tonight I'm here to speak on several books. One of the books or series I'd like to give my review on was also placed on the denied list, and this was prior to us being able to review the books. So the first one up that was on the denied list was Charlie and Mouse series, which was denied back in the summer. The review that was sent in regarding this series was very vague and made no mention of any reason why it should be denied. That was given to me. The series by Laurel Snyder is based on her children and their adventures in their neighborhood. I read first reviews from Kirkus, Hornbook, Publishers Weekly, Goodreads, and Amazon. The series is geared towards ages 6 through 9 and grades 1 through 4. Most reviews were overwhelmingly positive, with at least 81% of the reviews being 5 stars. There were 2 reviews from Amazon which may have sparked the person who sent in the vague review. One Amazon reviewer mentioned a sneaky woke LGBTQ agenda, while another mentioned feminizing boys because Mouse had on a pink tutu, as well as mentioning neighbors Mr. Eric and Mr. Michael. With that in mind, I headed to the library and checked out the series. I found the series to be a cute early reader about 2 brothers, probably around the ages of 3 and 5. Mouse is the younger brother while Charlie is the older one. I found nothing wrong with Mouse in a pink tutu. He also had on cowboy boots, cowboy vest, a headband with bug antenna on it, and he and Charlie were pretending that they were having a party at the park. Both were dressed in costume play clothes. Mouse is around 3 years old and he's playing and having fun, and I was bothered that some reviewer felt boys should be stereotyped at that age and not have imaginations. I also did not see or read any sneaky woke agenda. For all we know, Mr. Eric and Mr. Michael could have been brothers, could have been friends, or could have been roommates or housemates. I truly believe these reviewers were trying to read more into the series than was really there, and I have no qualms recommending it, nor reading such a sweet and cute series of stories to my own grandchildren. Moving on to the tabled list, the first up was Nowhere Better Than Here by Sarah Guillory. The review by AD at the last meeting stated that climate change is a hot topic issue, as we all know. I believe the other side, the deniers, also need to be represented. Having read Nowhere Better Than Here, not once was the phrase climate change mentioned in the book. It is simply the story of a young girl, Jillian Robichaud, who is finding her way of life changing. She lives in a small rural town in Louisiana called Boonton, near the bottom of the state on the edge of the bayou, with her mom and her grandma. Her town has been around for generations. Her grandma and great uncle, along with all her family members, love to retell the stories from their past, sharing their history of their lives and their town with Jillian. In fact, everyone in her town is so close, Jillian considers them all family, and they love sharing their stories with her. Over the years, as hurricanes and tropical storms have devastated her town, businesses have closed and people have moved away. When the latest storm comes through and floods her small town, closing the school and businesses and forcing families from their homes, the reality of how much her town is changing hits home. She and her cousin and friends must attend school in the neighboring town because theirs is so damaged and the school district has decided not to fix it. Jillian realizes her life is changing. Her mom is looking to move to the next town over since the state will not be repairing some of the roads and bridges into her town, and she is struggling with the realization that she will no longer get to graduate from the same high school her parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, cousins, aunts, and uncles all graduated from. In the process of trying to reconcile all that is happening and helping her neighbors clean up from the flooding, she finds old photographs from decades past and realizes that she may not be able to save her town, but she can preserve its history with photos and stories from the townspeople. It's a very uplifting story, and I enjoyed it immensely. I see no reason why it can't be in our libraries. Next is The Roly-Poly Spider by Jill Sardania. Reviewer SH said that they would not recommend it without reading it, and that some of the reviews stated it was graphic and that they were concerned that the spider befriends the bugs before eating them. Honestly, I read this book and found it quite cute. It was written for ages 2 to 6. It's a take on the Itsy Bitsy Spider song and is written in poem form. The roly-poly spider is doing what spiders do, but in a humorous way. After eating a beetle, a caterpillar, a bumblebee, a ladybug, a fly, and a millipede, the roly-poly spider went down the water spout and found herself stuck because she ate too much. Once she wriggled and wiggled and wobbled herself out, she went home, looked at the moon, and realized she needed a bedtime snack. That's where it ended. The story itself was funny, the artwork was exaggerated and silly with bright colors, and I see no reason why this book cannot be in the elementary libraries. Next is a very improbable story by Edward Einhorn. According to SH, they had concerns because the reviews they read stated that the math and the concepts of probability are wrong. I read the book, but admit I'm not a whiz at math. So I had our 8th grade algebra teacher read it as well. She told me the math was correct and she could find nothing wrong with it. There is no reason this book cannot be in our elementary libraries either. As for the supplemental resources for consideration this month, of the 14 fiction books for the elementary schools, I read 13 of the books. Elephant and Piggy book, Look What We Can Do, a competition, was the only one I didn't read because it was checked out at the time. All the books were available to check out at the public library or online through openlibrary.org or as read-alouds on YouTube. All of them were appropriate for school, and all of them were actually, and 2 of them were actually written by one of our own elementary school teachers. As for the nonfiction books, there are 14 for approval, and of the 14 prior to November 2nd when the reviews had to be in, I was able to check out 2 of the books. I was able to find the other 7 of the other remaining books online and read them, but not until after the deadline was due. All the books are appropriate for elementary libraries. Regarding the book Science Crafts for Kids, one reviewer had stated that this book provides a lot of crafts, but next to impossible ways of gathering material to actually complete them, and unless schools already have the materials, it would be hard. With this book, you need to realize it's for the library to be checked out and taken home so kids can do these projects with their parents and their siblings. And then one last thought before I'm done. I really believe it's important for anyone on the curriculum review list to actually read the books before they give their reviews. Most times they're only looking at the negative reviews. There could be 712 positive reviews, and they're focusing on only those 2 negative reviews. Almost all of these books were available through the public library. Those that were not, I found on openlibrary.org or as read-alouds on YouTube. Thank you again for listening. There's still more to be reviewed, so I will be back next month.
Thank you.
It's a lot of reading, Janelle. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
You're great.
So I will entertain a motion for the supplemental resources for board consideration, with an understanding that we may include in the motion the assistant superintendent's follow-up on the items that are there, as well as Janelle's recommendations.
So moved.
I didn't make the motion. I said we can consider when the motion is made, so y'all can make a motion.
He said so moved.
For what?
What you just
What
said.
you just said.
That we can consider this and we can consider that, that's in the motion? Okay. So moved. Do we have a second?
I'll move all those things that you listed,
Okey doke.
because I can't repeat it, but verbatim.
Not a problem. Thanks, Bob. And Randy, did you second?
I have not.
Okay, sorry.
But I will. I second.
Thanks. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nay. 4 in favor, 1 opposed. Motion carries. Where are we at?
Policies.
Thank you.
K3.
What was that?
K3.
K3, JJK, more policies. Okay, we have policy 1303 coming back before the board to add policy 8245, the unpaid school meal charges, as a policy to be reviewed annually. That's the only change to that document. And then we have policy 3040 compulsory attendance being brought forward. And I believe on this policy, basically, everything, because our attendance policy is very now, transparent and clear with what's expected. This attendance policy is specific to compulsory attendance. So basically, this policy cites Idaho code, and that, the statement, the board is responsible for the education of all school-age children within the district boundaries and ensures comparability of services at all other schools. There was a little bit of clarification that was needed on that final statement. That's why it's sitting in red. Because previously it said it reserves the right to ensure comparability, and that's not really true. We ensure comparability, that our services are,
Comparable with
yes, all other schools.
throughout the world?
Sure not. We can make that statement.
Is that?
Within our district boundaries, it
That's
says.
We're not comparable to, we're better than.
I like that.
So, those are the two policies that made it.
I move to approve both drafts, for policy 1303 and 3040.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Moving on to the winter athletic schedules.
Did you abstain?
Oh, 4 approved and 1 abstained.
I just didn't hear you say anything, so I thought I'd make sure that Rosanna read it.
Motion carried. Moving on to the winter athletic schedules. I know it's challenging, but it is the middle school. If we could remind Kimberly that they're a middle school now, not a junior.
Yes, ma'am.
And then, I'm just curious. We're approving these now, but there have been a few games that have been played.
Yes, and so I brought that to the attention it's the middle schools.
Right.
And they're at the mercy of the athletic directors coming together and putting the schedules together.
Mm-hmm.
And they just got them done.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not recognizing that the boards have to approve them, and nor are they caring about when our boards are meeting. So I did,
Okey-doke.
yeah. So I did have a conversation with both of the middle schools, and I let them know that technically we should not be, our kids should not be participating because the board has not approved these.
Right.
And so they are going to go back to their group because we don't have basketball schedules yet, and I asked the question, when are we starting basketball? The beginning of December. Well, our board meeting is December 14th. So they're going to try to get the group. But at this point, if they set the schedule to start December 7th, we're a week before we get to a board meeting.
Right.
So they're going to work on their group. I don't know why they are struggling to be more timely than the high schools. But it's not our ADs that are dragging their feet.
No, and I understand that because I know there's a lot of hands in the pot with these.
Mm-hmm.
It just bothers me that we're
After the
approving
fact.
things after the fact.
Yep.
Any other questions on the winter athletic schedules? Nope. Entertain a motion at this time.
Move to approve the winter athletic schedules for all schools as posted.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Moving on to, we acknowledge that we were receiving a donation of $2,000 from the Kootenai tribe. That donation is to the school. Traditionally, we then allocate it over to the Lakeland Educational Foundation. We did not take action on that, so we do need to take action to make sure that that occurs, if that is what we'd like to do with that $2,000.
I move we transfer the $2,000 from the Kootenai tribe to the Lakeland Education Foundation.
A second.
Having a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. So for discussion, we've been presented with the expulsion hearing procedures and behavior plan.
Yes, so we did some work after the last one that our clerk worked on. The timeline was really tight for her, and so Lynn and I tried to do some things that would be helpful to Rosanna. So one of those was we put a template together so principals now have exactly what is required in the event that they're recommending expulsion, with all of the documents. Some of the witness statements, the kids in particular typically write with a pencil, and when you copy those you can't read them, so we put in here that they need to be written in blue or black ink. And then all of the pieces that have to be there, and then just 2 copies of these forms. One of them must be redacted because we can't send documents home to parents with other students' names in them, but the board needs to be able to see the entire document to actually understand what's being portrayed. So, so this is just a template that we put together to help the principals know exactly, because we've had situations where some schools have done a really good job of making sure Rosanna had everything she needed, and then our newer principals sometimes don't gather all of the right materials. So so we put that together, and then this is a document you've seen before.
Yeah.
However, we made some changes to this as
Can
well.
I request real quick?
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say this before I forget. On like the stuff that comes out of Skyward, there's a lot of abbreviations, and we have no idea what they mean. We need a document. Anything that has that, we need a document included. Maybe you guys can do that. Some kind of key that.
We did ask Michelle Stanford if she could create that document for us, and then we can add it to the required documents list, so that it's there for you to refer to.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
One thing I'm a little cautious on, I guess, is the way the timeline is laid out on this colored sheet here, the procedures.
Yeah, so we just wanted to talk through that, and we can change it. This was just a brainstorm.
Okay. Because according to the timeline, a student will be expelled 14 days before they get in front of us.
Suspended.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it may not take quite that long. It just depends on, we need to give the administrator time to
Correct.
be really accurate and thorough in the investigative process.
Right.
Where we struggle is Rosanna needs to have a couple of days to be able to process all of the documents and send certified mail, and then we want to give parents at least 5 days to review what they're getting, to make the determination as to whether or not they're bringing legal counsel. And so when you add just those steps in there, it's 12 days.
Right,
And
school days, which is.
Exactly. So if you want it, this is just our brainstorm, so if you want us to reduce any of those, we certainly can. It's just like, it's hard to say. The administrator might get done in 3 days and then we're shaving 2 days off. But if it's a really involved investigation, it could take the full 5 days.
Right.
But we wanted to put a timeline in place so that it didn't take, you know, an extended period of time, that there's a sense of urgency, I guess, to get that work done. And then the document I just showed you is linked here. So we put that in there. Those are the changes to this document. Just trying to make sure everybody is clear as to what their responsibilities are and what the timeline is.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And
I was just gonna say, I think you all have done a great job on gathering this information and putting it in a cohesive, step-by-step sort of process. And I don't wanna short administrators, I mean, anytime, because I would much rather have a thorough threat assessment than one slapped together because we're going up against a clock. That we've been like, that's when it has to be.
Right. I guess on the board's end, I can be communicating with you, you know, if we're in this stage and the threat assessment's done, it's been 3 days, and we know we're giving her 2 to be able to get the work done that she needs to, and the parents 5, then we could be looking at what's the very next day that,
Right.
and so we could set it as quickly as we could once we know how long that threat assessment, once we know the threat assessment is done, because the rest of that is kind of solid, I guess, unless you want to change the time, the amount of time that we're giving families or the amount of time we're giving Rosanna.
But I thought we sent out a letter, like, when this gets started, letting them know we're doing a threat assessment and you're gonna have a hearing before the board on X date.
We do the threat assessment, and the parents are part of that. We have to
Okay.
interview them,
Okay.
so they know the process. The notification, they get the notice of temporary suspension.
Okay.
But then all of the rest of that comes through Rosanna to them. The notice of expulsion hearing, that all comes through Rosanna in that certified mail packet.
Okay. Okay. So on the notice of suspension, there's no talk of the expulsion hearing that's coming? I
No.
thought there was.
No, because we may not end up doing an
Okay.
expulsion hearing.
Okay.
Kids get suspended out of school for lots of different things, you know, so they get in a fight or whatever, we're not bringing them to the board. It's just, but that way we're tracking you. The board had asked to know when kids are out of
Yes.
school.
Yes.
So if you want us to adjust the length of time that we have there, we can. And I don't know, if the principals are now doing the redacting, which Rosanna was doing, and that took her a lot of time. And they have the document now that shows everything that's required, it may not take her 2 days, but
Yes, if I may interject and just say
Thank you.
that the reason why I asked for 2 days was because on this last one, I received information at 2:30, 3 p.m. and we gave them finally until 4 o'clock because I had to print everything, email everything, and then go to the post office. And the post office closes at 5 p.m. here. So, that's why I asked for the additional date. If I receive things, the whole packet at 10, 11, 12, even 2 p.m., I'm okay with hopefully completing that in the next couple hours, 2 or 3 hours, but if I get it later than that, that's where I have problems.
And she was up against the time clock because we had set the board meeting date.
Yeah.
And we wanted to make sure we were giving 5 days to the, but the part that we had kind of cemented in place was how much time are we giving the administrators? And it took them longer than I think we thought it was going to take them, which put her in a bind.
Well, and the threat assessment isn't just the administrator doing things, there's
Right.
other
Law
parties
enforcement.
that are involved, so.
I think this is a good plan, so.
And students, when they're out of school, can still have access to their learning. They can be doing their work at home and be able to email their teachers for assistance or call them or whatever, so it's not necessarily non-learning time, I guess, while they're waiting. But
Okay. Yeah, I think if you are comfortable with those dates and Rosanna's confident that 2 days is sufficient for her, I don't see any problem with that. I'm not sure if mailing by law requires 5 days. I thought it was 3, but it could be 5. I don't know.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, actually the mailing of the 5 days is the findings and conclusion. That's the only one that says the 5 days.
Statutorily, we're not required to give.
Yeah, there's no date. It's, you have to give them a reasonable amount of time to prepare
And potentially request an attorney.
Yeah.
So I'm a little confused. The findings and conclusion, that's
the one
created
that
after
yes,
the hearing.
that's the only one that specifies the 5 days.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
The other one, the before the notice, has
Right.
to give you have to give the parents
Reasonable time.
reasonable
Right.
time.
Okay.
Which we thought was 5 days.
Not an issue. Okay.
Somebody
Which
else
in a
might
sense
not
is
think
only
this.
maybe 2 to 3, unless we are emailing, because if we're electronically submitting.
At least they
Then
can
we're ahead of the
start
game.
looking
Right.
at things
Right.
until they get the hard copies, yep.
Okay. Any further discussion on these documents?
Looks good.
Yes, it does. The attendance policy, the district would like some direction from the board as to whether the attendance policy we just approved, if it is retroactive or not.
So, since COVID, even though we've had the attendance policy in place, it was set aside because we were telling kids, if you're sick, don't come to school. If you have normally the rule has always been, if you're running a fever or you're vomiting, please stay home, but otherwise, if you have a stuffy nose, a cough or whatever, come to school. But because of COVID and people's concerns about COVID, we were saying if you have symptoms of COVID, please don't come to school. So we felt like we couldn't say that to people and then hold them accountable for the 9 days of attendance, because kids get colds. And so it did get set aside, and we didn't tell parents and students at the onset of this school year that the attendance policy was coming back to the policy committee and then back to the board, and that it was being reinstated. And so there's just a little bit of trepidation about now going to parents and whose kids have missed 7 days of school already at the end of first quarter, and sending the letter home saying you only have 2 more days. Or some kids have missed more than 10 days of school in the first quarter, and holding them accountable and withholding credit.
Is this supposed to be per semester? I don't remember.
It's
per semester.
If you miss more than 9 days in a semester, you have to petition for credit.
I would say we just kind of make it start second semester, because people didn't know first semester.
That would be my recommendation, because I feel like we should have given notice if it was going to change on parents.
What's your recommendation?
That we, well, actually, instead of second semester, that we start at second quarter. We just started the second quarter, so we can, the parents are aware now that the attendance policy is in place. So we won't count the absences from first quarter if they get to 9 or 10 by the end of the second quarter, and then they would be with the holding credit, and we would move into second semester more normally than 9 days over the semester. But I wouldn't go back and count the absences from first quarter. I guess that would be my recommendation, to be fair.
So theoretically,
to
they could have
families.
9 absences in the second quarter.
Mhm. They would be held.
No more than 9 and still get credit.
Which isn't ideal, but I just feel like we didn't give that information to families, and they've been operating under a different set of rules for 2 years.
And you feel that parents and the students are adequately notified at this point, or will be?
Yes.
Okay.
And the last thing that we're actually waiting on is we've got the 6-day letter done, but what we also need board approval for what the language in the letter that goes home saying your child has missed more than the 9 days, and credit it will be withheld, and these are the steps for requesting that they maintain those credits, the petition. And then what does it look like at the elementary level after those days? Because we have we've had in the last 2 years, elementary kids who miss 50 days of school, and you cannot recover from missing 50 days of first grade. With all that happens in a first grade classroom. So what does that look like? We have not for the last 8 or 9 years, well, since the previous superintendent, no student has been brought to the board for truancy. I have let the building principals know that I'm willing to bring to you students who are habitually truant, and request that the board submit them to the prosecuting attorney for prosecution in violation of that law, and if we can't get parents to work with us to get kids at school, at least at the elementary level and middle school level. High school level has its own teeth because of the graduation requirements and the credit, withholding the credit, but we don't have teeth at the elementary and middle school.
Yeah, the elementary schools don't really operate on a semester basis, so.
But we've always held them to that same, when I was
But the
principal.
same standard.
That 90% attendance.
Yeah.
Yep. And I just always explain to parents that this is a life skill, and when I did my master's program, we had to do a research project, and I spent hours at Lakeland High School going through all of the student records and looking at every student who lost credit or had to petition for credit, and then took those names and went back and looked at their transcripts all the way back to kindergarten and looked at how many days of school they'd missed, and that pattern starts in kindergarten. So it is incumbent upon the elementary schools to help families build positive attendance for their kids, because it is a life skill. So if parents are allowing kids to not come to school regularly, then I would like them to be in front of the board. Because in my mind, it starts to border on educational neglect when we're missing 50 days of first grade.
I don't think we should continue to uphold the reputation that we just pass kids through. There needs to be accountability, because if we're an educational institution, we need to educate these kids.
It's our responsibility to make sure that they're in school.
Yes.
So we still have a little bit of work to do on that last letter.
Okay.
So that, because I know that the 2 high schools
have historically had their own letters, and the desire is that we're just using one so that it doesn't matter which school they're at, their parents are seeing the same language.
Right. So do we wanna give direction that it's implemented on second quarter, or?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that, you know, if everyone has been sufficiently notified, so not covered.
I sent the attendance policy out in the Lakeland highlights to parents, so they did.
Yeah, I saw that.
Principals have done the same.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Next discussion item is the proposed resolution.
That's your LGBTQ.
Yeah, but Lisa did, she's found, UChat.
I had a meeting yesterday with one of our parents who is here. They moved here a year and a half ago, I think, from Western Washington, and she is organizing a Parents' Rights in Education Lakeland chapter. And so she came and met with me, and she brought with her a lady who has been trying to get something like that started in Coeur d'Alene. And anyway, as we were talking, the other lady who attended gave me the name of Karen Castaning, who is from Pacific Justice. Oh, sorry, this is Kara. She's the lady that came. She gave me the name Kate Hartley of Pacific Justice Institute, she's an attorney, and she deals specifically with these kinds of parent rights issues. And she is willing to write draft resolution language pro bono for us to at least have a starting place for the policy committee to be able to then tweak it so that it fits what the board wants for Lakeland, instead of the policy committee having to write it from scratch. So I just would love some direction and to be able to reach out and ask her to provide that for us. It would cost us nothing and at least gives us a starting place.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. You look like you have a question.
Yeah, I'm just not sure where this is headed, I guess.
The board's been talking about putting forth a resolution with regard to how we want to handle the LGBTQ questions and what that looks like in a classroom. And I think for our teachers' sake, it's important that we do that, because these conversations are coming up and they don't know what their response should be, and they don't want to do anything that outside of what the board wants us to do. And so we just want some clarity. It's a conversation that should be happening at home and not in the classroom.
Okay. Yes. But what I first heard you talking about was some sort of parent rights.
Oh yeah, I just was giving you context of my meeting. I have a parent who's starting a parent rights in education group in Lakeland where she's meeting with
Is
parents.
she under the impression that parents don't have rights in Lakeland School District?
No, she actually loves the fact that she's in Lakeland School District, but she's coming from Washington and she just wants to make sure that the things that are happening over there don't happen here. So I'm willing to work with her. She's a very nice lady and cares deeply, and so it was actually a really positive meeting and a conversation. People are wanting to protect what we have, I guess, because they know what it can look like if we don't.
Yes. Well, we can take a look at it. I'm a little uneasy, but
What makes you uneasy about the?
I can't quite grasp where these people are coming from and what their long-term intent is.
Right.
I mean, we as a board, as a school district, obviously undertake policy development in the vein of, you know, what has been described. Why do we have a parent rights group that is suddenly involved in that, I guess, is my question.
Oh, they're actually nationwide And there are several chapters in Idaho. I know the board, or maybe personally, I know there's been several reach outs from parents asking, you know, what is the policy in Lakeland? You know, how is Lakeland going to handle these situations? And I think we've had a little bit of that discussion over the sex ed law and different things like that. And I think they're asking, I think what they're really looking for is for us to put something, the district to say, this is how we see it. You know,
This is our stance.
Right. This is, we believe this is a conversation between parents or not between parents and the kid, you know, whatever the,
Well, with respect to critical race theory, we did come forward with a resolution and said this is where we are within this
Appropriately
box.
so, yeah.
Right. That's exactly what we're doing with this. This is where we are within this box.
Which is fine.
Right. The fact of the matter is, I mean, Ramon and I, we provide an abundant amount of time, and we need help because it is so overwhelming and there's so many policies. And we've finally gotten 3 people that have stepped up and have started into the policy committee, and we're working out some kinks there, but we're strapped and we need help. And we keep talking about things, and you know, we're not doing a lot of forward movement. So if we can get a resource like an attorney that's willing to draft something that we can use as a starting point,
Template.
yeah, I mean,
And we
I'm
can
all
tweak it
for
to
it.
what we may or may not like, or
Yeah.
what we,
And
yeah, it's a
that's
starting point.
That's all that's being proposed here.
correct.
Yes.
Correct, yes.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I just wanted you to know how I got this lady's information. It came out of the conversation that I had with the mom that I met with yesterday. So.
You know, this isn't something that's going to be brought up and here we go. It's like, here's some suggested ideas of how to start and go from there. Because I've tried researching it to see, I mean, Ohio is really big on certain things. I'm like, whoa. So, I mean, and then going back into our own statute and code and making sure Supreme Court, I mean, there's a lot to consider.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
This
we
way we're
can't just
not-
do it willy-nilly.
This way we're not having to invent the wheel, we can just improve
Correct.
on it.
Yeah, and that's fine. I just don't wanna get into a back and forth tit for tat conversation over that kind of policy.
No.
No.
we've been asked, in all fairness, I think the first email came to us almost, I think January will be 2 years now. The parents have, and they haven't been real boisterous about it, but they have emailed the board saying, hey, you know, what is,
Yeah.
Where do we stand?
Well,
Yeah.
and I commend the policy committee for taking that challenge on, because it's not an easy one,
No.
to be sure.
well, we started with 243 policies, and the most up-to-date were only 2 that were implemented in 2016.
Well, I'm talking about this specific
Yeah.
topic that is on the table here.
Yeah,
but-
yeah, well, I mean, we're willing to do whatever needs to be done, but, yeah, it's been, especially when we rely on a certain organization, and then when we find, you know, consistently, you know, wrong statute, wrong citation, laws that don't exist on the books anymore, we just got to a point where we couldn't. We had to fine tooth everything
Yeah.
to make sure that it was accurate. But I am elated that we have other people showing up now,
Yes.
yeah, from the community.
And more are welcome.
Yes.
Nope, I think it's a great starting point.
Yep.
Okay, I will reach out to her.
Perfect.
Good job, guys.
Curriculum? What's that? There's a discussion that says curriculum.
What is curriculum?
I was just looking at that,
What is it?
wondering the same thing.
I think it was something your clerk did not delete.
Okey doke, moving on.
Okay, excellent.
to the THS activity handbook.
So Timberlake High School put this together, and Lakeland High School really likes it, and so if this pleases the board, then we'll move forward with making a copy and having Lakeland High School put their logos and things in, but we're trying to kind of get everybody on the same page.
That would be excellent. I have some critiques, but we don't have to even talk about that right now. But I do like the idea of it being fairly universal. I would love the idea of linking some policies in here because it says and board policies, and
Okay.
it's like, well, which ones are we highlighting?
Right. Okay.
So yeah.
Was there anything else that was glaring that you would want us to work on?
Consistency would be good, in the sense that we have Lakeland School District. I really think it should just say our school district, because you are talking about a specific high school. Then we flip to LJSD, then we flip to district, then we flip to something else. So just consistency throughout the whole document.
Okay.
But other than that, I think whoever did this, they did a great job.
Yeah, they put a lot of work into it.
They
Katie Walton at
Did she?
High School.
Well, and it's awesome, and I do think each high school should have, because I love the fact that this points everything out to the parent and to the athlete, and it's all right here.
It's all
great.
in one place,
Yeah.
and it's consistent
Yeah.
from sport to sport and
Yeah.
across coaches, and
Yep.
I think it's
Yeah.
awesome.
She
Yeah,
did a
they
great
did.
job.
Yeah. Okay, please thank her from
I like it.
I will. So we'll work with her on the policies and kind of cleaning up the consistency thing.
Okay.
And then we'll make the copy, and once we're ready, we'll bring both high schools to the board for approval. Okay.
And then the T&L handbook.
This is just, we bring it to you each year because it gets updated with
Okay.
instructional calendars, modifications and tweaks. And Lynn is always fine tuning the format to make sure that it's user friendly and pleasing to the eye. Anyway, the pacing, probably the one change is the pacing guides.
The new content
And the new
standards
content
are in
standards.
there, cause they're completely formatted very differently, so, just easy access for the teachers. Report cards are always linked in, those change a little bit. Our vertical alignment docs, it's highlighted because we're changing them this year. We haven't looked at them in a while, and so, the teams are starting to work through that.
This will become important after we identify the textbook that we will be using next year. So, lots of resources. But the biggest change is the standards, and then
Can you just elaborate a little bit on these assessment guides? We have a
This.
district comprehensive assessment plan,
Where-
a secondary, it's,
we're required
okay,
to have this.
okay,
And we're actually required to have this, and we had to submit it to the state board for approval so that we could run the Danielson course that we have to have our principals take in order
Okay.
to get certified.
okay,
So it's required to have these definitions, and then really what's important is our calendar. So you can, this actually is a really good visual for you to see
Mhm.
what we're using for assessments and when they're being given.
okay,
So this is, the district one is elementary and secondary all in there, and then we separated out the elementary specific for the elementary and the secondary specific for the secondary.
okay.
So it's a little bit easier for them. but as a district, this covers, and it has the dates of all of the state, testing windows. Fine. So this RAN, that's the new DIPL, or the new dyslexia requirement.
Okay.
So, all of those pieces are in there.
Okay. Any other comments, discussions on the teaching and learning?
No, a lot of great work, a lot of
Yeah.
great organization. I mean, it's just nice to see all that stuff. It's awesome.
Safety protocols for facility use. I asked this to be put on because, we have Park and Rec using our buildings and they're propping doors open.
Oh.
And we're not supposed to be doing that. And I don't know that we have anything, that supports the fact that they if you're gonna be in our buildings, you need to do things our way. So, I don't know where we go with this, but, if we're hitting hard home, do not leave the doors propped open with our staff, with everybody. I don't know why we would let people into our building and then allow them to do that. It's just kind of like.
So are they in our building when school's in session?
No.
Oh.
This is like when Park and Rec is
yeah.
using Betty Keefer's gym for basketball practice.
Oh,
If
yeah.
There's a group.
Could be a Saturday morning or.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the why behind the propping of the doors that, for us to consider, I guess, as we try to figure out how to resolve this, is that, one person will have access to the
Right.
building. But, so the coach might get there and the few people who arrive with the coach, but then you've got parents who are arriving, and unless you have somebody standing at the door opening it as people come, they prop the door open so that the parents can drop the kids off and the kids can come directly into the building, but sometimes they don't then go, once the kids are all there, and unprop the door, so, but that's the why behind why the doors get propped open.
You're not gonna be able to do that.
What, not prop the door open?
No, because like this weekend, we probably had a couple thousand people at Lakeland High School.
Okay.
Coming and going. There's no security or nothing there.
Okay, so then why isn't the door just unlocked, so the door can be
It
closed?
is unlocked.
Okay, so then the door's opening
Yeah.
and closing.
So that's,
Okay.
just, so they're using a key?
Well, they just unlock it. The administrator goes there and unlocks the door.
Okay, so the administrator
Yeah,
has a key.
they're there.
I don't care if the
But-
door's unlocked.
Yeah.
My concern is that we're propping the door open, we're not supposed to be doing that.
Yeah, our Parks and
Just
Rec.
tell them to
people-
unlock it.
You tell them, Dave.
I will. Unlock the door, don't prop it open.
Well, I don't know if that's in any of our,
At the elementary level, like for Park and Rec, they wouldn't have a key.
I know Mountain View gets unlocked, but.
I mean, I don't know that that's really, that's totally, that they're not there during the school hours. And it's just that, it's just a regular Park and Rec people having a tournament or something. Like, I don't know that we can, I guess I'm missing the point of the connection between whether school's in or out of service. I can see when school's in, keeping the door safety issue, but if it's a public event, keeping the door propped open.
In our agreement for people to use facilities, is there not a hold harmless clause?
Yes.
There is.
Yes.
There is.
And they have to
What,
carry
what
$1
that
million
means is whoever's
Yeah.
liability.
agreed to use the building agrees to hold us harmless for
Right.
anything that happens. They stand for liability.
Right.
Yeah.
And they have to have insurance too.
Yeah, they have to have $1 million insurance policy.
Did somebody complain because the doors were being propped open, or?
It was brought to my attention.
Oh, gotcha. In other words, if this is for this school, I see what you're saying, it's not equal kind of thing. But the point is it's not a school function, right?
Correct, but it is a school building, and if we're advocating for safety and security, and then we're letting our kids, granted, they're joining a park and rec team, but they're still, in my opinion, our kids.
Mhm.
And then they're going into our buildings and the doors are propped open. Well, then there's no safety. Plus, we hit it over the head with all of our teachers and staff. Don't leave the door propped open. So
Well, there
it
isn't,
was
there
just brought
isn't
to my
some, like,
attention.
it makes sense, I agree with Ramona, if the kids aren't, if our students during school time aren't at the school, if it's not during school time and we don't have classrooms full of kids and we have a park and rec team of 6 kids and their parents drop them off and the door is blocked open,
Mhm.
you know, in an emergency situation where mom needs to come get their kiddo halfway through basketball practice and the door's not propped open or there isn't a way for them to get in and the whole team is in the gym, nobody's gonna hear them pounding on the door, on the front doors, you know.
No, I hear you.
So that would be,
I'm just bringing it up. It was brought to my
Nope.
attention.
Yeah.
and I'm giving my opinion.
And I appreciate
You know, what we
your-
might do is put a statement in the facility use agreement that kind of has the vein of what we expect in a school building. Make it their responsibility, you know, to adequately
For
secure the
safety.
building, provide security for the building, or however you wanna term it.
That way, yeah.
And we advise that doors not be left propped open on a continuous basis, you know, whatever.
So it's okay to have the door unlocked, but it's not okay to have it propped open. That makes no sense. It's unlocked, it's unlocked.
I guess it's just perception.
Yeah.
It's one thing for a parent to go up and pull open the door. It's another for a parent to go up and be like, great, the door's propped open.
Anybody can walk in.
Yeah.
Anybody can
Go
walk
hang out in
in.
the bathroom,
It's open.
do whatever, you know,
It's open, it's open.
just saying. I just brought it to your attention. That's
Thanks.
all I did. You're welcome. Any input for future agenda items?
Nope.
Okay, 12 minutes. Alright, with that, I'll entertain a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 742061B. So moved.
Second.
Need a roll call vote?
Thank you for coming in.
Yes.
Vice Chair
Yes.
Grissom, Trustee Jones.
Yes.
Trustee
Drive
James.
safe. Have a good night.
Trustee
Yes,
Lang.
yes, sorry.
Trustee
Roseanne, or Rebecca made chili and,
Oh, Ben, you dropped your hat, bud.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we've come out of executive session. There is no action items afterwards.